Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. I'm Mayor Kurt Wilson. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilman William Mortland, and the William F. Buckley of Roswell, Councilmember Alan Sells. And in the tradition of recognizing the brave souls who decide to run for public office, we always recognize candidates regardless of where they are here in our area. And let's recognize Keith Getman, who is running for House District 51. Keith, thanks for being with us. That's way too much applause for a candidate. Wait till he's elected. All right, I'll now turn this meeting over to our city administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton. Mr. Randy Knighton will explain how this meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are to hear directly from residents on items listed on the agenda. Public comments and questions are essential for Mayor and Council to consider and incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Residents are at the top of the organizational chart of the City of Roswell, and therefore, it is imperative for Mayor and Council to hear from residents in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, we ask that you fill out a comment card, which can be accessed at the back of the room in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask, of course, that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the meeting this evening, which should be and is reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer for the meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage everyone to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city of Roswell. And you can find a list of those items at roswell365.com. There are a number of events scheduled upcoming in the city, which the mayor and or the council will speak about shortly, which promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton, so much. Thank you all for being here. We're excited, privileged that you have decided to join us tonight. One request that I have for you is that we have basically one conversation in the room, and it's usually either the person speaking from the dais or the person speaking here below at the podium. If you find that you need to have a conversation, my request was that you would leave the grounds here and go outside. That would be my one request, because sometimes people need to talk, but I would ask that you do it outside and otherwise pay attention to whoever's speaking at the podium or speaking here at the dais. I appreciate that very much. We are very privileged and blessed tonight for our invocation and moment of silence to have Father Daniel from St. Michael's Catholic Church to lead us in our prayer and a moment of silence. Father.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Almighty and ever-living God, we invoke thy blessing upon our country, upon the state of Georgia, and upon the city of Roswell. We ask thee to give eternal rest to all of those who gave their lives for our country as we commemorated them yesterday. Bless all of their families. Bless all who are here present. Send the Holy Ghost upon all of us to inflame in our hearts thy love. Give us a spirit of humility, charity, and meekness in imitation of thy divine Son. Bless these proceedings, that everything done and said here today may be pleasing to thee, may find its beginning in thee, and find its completion in thee. And we ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, thy Son, our Lord, who with thee livest and reignest in the unity of the Holy Ghost, God, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Thank you, Father Daniel of St. Michael's Catholic Church. At this time, we're very privileged to have Antoine Hughes, who's an administrative assistant for the Roswell Fire Department, to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Antoine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Antoine. At this time, sir, I'd like to ask Petty Officer Hughes to stay up there, as I will ask the council to come down and join me for the first item under the mayor's report, which is the reading of a proclamation for the esteemed Veteran of Roswell Award. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. United States Navy Petty Officer, First Class E6, Signalman Antoine Hughes. Whereas Antoine Hughes, a distinguished employee and esteemed veteran of Roswell, has exemplified dedication and service to his country and community. And whereas on August 8, 1993, at the age of 18, Mr. Hughes enlisted in the United States Navy in Jacksonville, Florida, committing to a 2-year active duty and a 6-year reserve contract. Whereas Mr. Hughes attended boot camp at the Naval Training Center in Orlando, Florida, and subsequently served as a signalman, receiving specialized training as a master helmsman on board the USS Bainbridge at the Naval Air Station Signalman A School in Meridian, Mississippi, and to the Navy Support Advanced Training Command in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Whereas Petty Officer First Class Signalman Hughes demonstrated exemplary service during a special assignment operation known as Sharp Guard in the Adriatic Sea from January 4th, 1993 to June 1996, where he participated in enforcing United Nations Security Council resolutions to prevent unauthorized vessel entry into the territorial waters of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and to halt the transport of arms into the former Yugoslavia. And throughout his distinguished career, Petty Officer First Class Signalman Hughes earned numerous commendations, including NATO Medal Article 5, the Naval Reserve Sea Service Ribbon, and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, reflecting his exceptional dedication and performance. And whereas after his active duty, Petty Officer First Class Signalman Hughes continued his education and graduated from Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in English, while also contributing to the decommissioning team of the USS Bainbridge. Whereas Petty Officer First Class Signalman Hughes concluded his naval service on August 10th, 2009, with notable assignments including the USS George Washington and the USS Edison during his tenure in the United States Naval Reserve. And whereas Mr. Hughes remains an active and engaged citizen, volunteering as an active and financial member of St. John Masonic Lodge No. 7 and as an active member of Beulah Missionary Baptist Church in Decatur, Georgia. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Petty Officer First Class Signalman Antoine Hughes, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and to our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve the United States Armed Forces. Congratulations, Ed. Here's the hard part. You get the microphone.
Okay. Always prepared. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say good evening. It is truly an honor and deeply humble. I'm truly honored and deeply humbled to stand before you today as Roswell's esteemed veteran. First, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to those who on the selection panel that acknowledged my contributions here today. It is a privilege to be recognized among those who have dedicated their lives to serving our country. This event is not only about me, it's about all of us. Every veteran who have sacrificed, persevered, and served with dedication, each of us carries a unique story, but together we represent the strength, resilience, and spirit of our nation. In closing, I am grateful for the recognition and the opportunity to stand amongst such distinguished individuals. Let us continue to support one another, uplift our communities, and strive for a better tomorrow.
Want to bring your family up for a picture?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We'll get that.
Well, staying in that same kind of fine tradition of honoring wonderful and great servants, next on the mayor's report is recognition of the City of Roswell's Public Safety Department by the Sons of the American Revolution. I'd like to invite Stacy McCarver, the president of the Sons of the American Revolution, to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We appreciate that the Piedmont Chapter Sons of the American Revolution are allowed to be here with you this evening. I would go ahead and like to ask if my fellow members could join me here at the podium, and as well as the recipients for the awards tonight, to let us get organized here and save a little time. I and the other members of the Sons of the American Revolution are members because we are documented descendants of some of those who served to help form this country nearly 250 years ago. That service could take form in many ways. We most often think about fighting in the war, being active soldiers. But there are other ways that our ancestors could have served. They could have served as local government leaders. They could have served as state or national leaders. They could have served the judiciary. Many ways to serve. One option that was not available to them at that time, though, was to serve as policemen or firemen. Those roles simply did not exist at that time. But we're very fortunate that those roles exist in this day and time, and we have an opportunity to honor those tonight who do so well to serve us in this community. So tonight, we gather to honor our Roswell first responders who have been awarded the 2023 Service Awards nominated by their peers. These awards celebrate the bravery, dedication, selflessness demonstrated by these exceptional individuals. Firefighters risk their lives to protect us from peril, showcasing courage and skill in every emergency. Police officers maintain peace and safety, showing integrity and compassion each day. We are proud to recognize these heroes. Your actions of you around me here embody the spirit of service and sacrifice that strengthens the community around us. We are deeply grateful for your unwavering commitment to our safety and well-being. On behalf of the Sons of the American Revolution and the Roswell community, we extend our heartfelt congratulations and especially our gratitude. Your dedication inspires us all, and we thank each of you and congratulate all of the 23 Service Award recipients. And I will call them out name by name, and these gentlemen will assist me. I failed to mention, I would like to make sure that the service chiefs are up here as well, police and fire, so thank you if you are already. First, the firefighters. Fire Service Professional of the Year. We've heard from him already tonight, Antoine Hughes. Congratulations. Fire Chiefs Award recipients, firefighter Daniel Pintos, and firefighter Maurice Gates. We have two individuals who could not be here with us tonight. Firefighter of the Year, firefighter Louis Bruno, but I'll ask if the chief could accept his certificate and medal on his behalf. In addition, Fire Officer of the Year, Captain Craig DeLay, was unable to be with us tonight, so if we could ask you to do the same, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And now our law enforcement officers. Officer of the Year, Officer Brianna Francis. Supervisor of the Year, Sergeant Gary Johnson. Communications Officer of the Year, Communications Officer Kayla Duncan. Communications Supervisor of the Year, Communications Supervisor Nina Thorne. And then the Professional Staff Member of the Year, Anna Baudry, Administrative Specialist 2. Again, our heartfelt thanks to each of you here tonight. Thank you for your service in this community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Stacy.
Yep, we're gonna go back here for a photo.
Very good.
Get ourselves around.
All right, perfect. Ready? Everybody look right here. 1, 2, 3.
Come back and get one. Oh,
Wait, back, tight, just tighten up. I'm so short.
Thank you, everybody.
That's a good call. Good call. Just as a continued thank you to Stacy McCarver, the president of the Sons of the American Revolution. Thank you to the Sons of the American Revolution for recognizing, and I'll just read these names again so for posterity. The Police Supervisor of the Year, Sergeant Gary Johnson. Police Officer of the Year, Officer Brianna Francis. 911 Supervisor of the Year, Training Coordinator Nina Thiem. 911 Officer of the Year, Kayla Duncan. Civilian of the Year, Anna Baudry. Roswell Fire Department Fire Officer of the Year, Captain Craig DeLay. Firefighter of the Year, Firefighter Louis Bruno. Fire Chief's Choice Award, Firefighter Daniel Pintos. And Fire Service Professional of the Year, Antoine Hughes, Administrative Assistant. So once again, thank you so much for the Sons of the American Revolution honoring our wonderful, wonderful public safety folks who do such a great job for us in the city of Roswell. I should have just asked the council to stay down there because next on the mayor's report is recognition of something that probably all of us, almost all of us went to high school here, I think, except maybe David Johnson. I don't think he went. But I don't think I went to high school. He didn't want to go to high school. But most of us went to high school, and a lot of us played sports. And, you know, a lifelong dream, and if you ever get it, you know, if you ever have the chance, and very few of us ever do, is to become a state champion. And this year in Roswell, just to let you know, just to kind of give you some sense, we have already recognized some of these special people. Because of school schedules, it's hard to get people in. But we got one special group here tonight. I'm going to introduce them in a minute. But I just want to tell you that this year, Roswell High School boys lacrosse was the Class 5A, 6A state champs back-to-back this year and last year. Blessed Trinity had a 144-pound weight class 6A division state champion in wrestling in Jack Garrett. Blessed Trinity also had the 4x800 meter relay state champions in Addie Wilson, Elena Carter, London Ray, and Claire Peterson. Claire, also at Blessed Trinity, was also the 1,600 meter state champion and the 3,200 meter state champion, as well as being valedictorian this year. So, that being said, I have a very, very special group who is also back-to-back state champions. These young ladies will remember this for the rest of their life. It's a small thing that we want to introduce them and recognize them in the front of the community. At this time, I'd like to ask the Fellowship Christian School varsity girls soccer team, who won the 2024 GHSA AA State Soccer Championship this year and last year, to come up here in the front, and I'd ask the council to come join me.
I like that you came with your awards. Well, congratulations, by the way. Thank you. Thank you.
Just to let you know, okay? So I'm going to ask Councilmember Lee Hills, who is our liaison for the Parks and Rec Department, to say a few words. And then I'm going to make a point of embarrassing all of you who made the mistake of coming here tonight, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. To these young ladies and the leadership team, which is not just these gentlemen, but everybody in the faith community and our school community, congratulations. This is no small feat, and I'm no soccer player, but I can recognize athletes when I see them. I'm always amazed at what this city turns out from our high schools. Not to take away from fellowship tonight, but Roswell High School, Centennial High School, Blessed Trinity, and we have a number of homeschooled and hybrid young people that are turning out great athletes, great academes, and great futures. So it gives me great pleasure to congratulate you as a Christian, saying thank you for holding up that end of the deal, and you have great things ahead of you. But tonight it's about this hardware and what you've proven to do, that you set out, and I know it took a lot of hard work, sweat, blood, tears, maybe more tears than you want to admit, but it's worth it, and we're really, really proud of you. So thank you for honoring the city with your athleticism and your reputation in the community. Wish you the very best for the future.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, we got 7 of you tonight, and this is where you get to introduce yourself, get to tell everybody if you're a senior, what position you played, and where you're going to school next year.
Okay. My name's Kate Grandy. I'm a freshman at Fellowship this year, and I play left winger, and I'm going back to Fellowship.
That's not what I heard. I heard you're going to college next year.
My name is Kayla Clark. I was a junior. I played right back, and I'm going back to Fellowship.
My name's Miller Howenstein. I played center back, center back, and I'm a freshman going back to Fellowship.
My name is Elise Howard. I am a junior at Fellowship. I play left back, and I'm going back to Fellowship.
I'm Alden Hayes, and I'm a goalkeeper, and I'm going to Liberty University next year to play soccer.
My name is Avery Paulson. I'm a midfielder or forward, and I'm also going to Liberty next year to play soccer.
My name is Rachel Williamson. I'm going to University of Georgia next year, and yeah. Oh, and I play midfield.
And wait, let's all hold up the rings because this is serious. Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
All right. So, those rings are cool. All right, Coach, we got to be with you guys last year, and the freshmen were with us, so I'm glad you're with us this year. But one of the things that's I think, so redeeming is the leadership that you bring and how much what a great mentor you are as a man and as a man of faith. And I'd like you to just talk about that for a minute.
Wow. Talk about put somebody on the spot. Thank you. Well, firstly, I want to give praise to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because the reason we stand here today is because of him and no other reason whatsoever. This group of young women, it's important to have an amazing team behind you. Mayor, I'm sure you can appreciate that. And they make you look good. This group of young women made us look like we knew what we were doing. They are absolutely amazing. And the greatest thing about them is actually the signature word that we had this year, which was humility, which was wrapped around Philippians 2, 3, and 4. And they exemplified that everywhere they went, everybody they played, even teams who said, hey, you just beat us to death, but we still want to play you next year because you're so nice. And so when you can walk off the field and have that type of response, that's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. And it makes it easy for us as coaches. But it is an honor to be able to pour Jesus into these young people each and every day. A privilege that we don't deserve, but we will take it. If he wants to keep letting us do it, we'll keep doing it. So thank you so much. And thank you for inviting us here. This is an amazing honor, and I'm glad that these young women get that opportunity. So thank you.
Well, I could tell you, as the mayor of this city, it is amazing. It's a great privilege to have a school like Fellowship in our city. It's a great privilege to have so many wonderful families and just these amazing young people that come out of this great school. And it's so great to have men like you leading these young ladies. So thank you for what you do. Coach, by the way, you didn't introduce yourself. My bad. Tell everybody who you are.
My name is Andy Travers, and I am obviously the head coach of this young ladies team. I'm the head coach of the boys team as well, but I'm also an associate athletic director at Fellowship Christian School.
I go to the other coach. Hey, Coach, tell everybody who you are.
I'm Ron Apollon, assistant coach for both the girls and the boys.
You guys do an amazing job. All right, guys, give it up for these amazing young ladies and these coaches, back-to-back state champions. I got one thing for you. I got a gift for you. Okay. Just get out.
We'd like to present this to you and your school and your team for outstanding athleticism and a great win this year. So congratulations on behalf of this mayor and council.
Thank you so much.
It's a key to the city.
Key to the city.
I thought it was for me, but it's not.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So, Mel, we actually have a gift for you. If you remember last year, we brought you a medal. I was actually expecting you to be wearing it today. I mean, I know it's in the desk drawer, probably locked away safe. I get it. Okay. But we do have another gift for you. It's not the trophy. It is not the trophy. But there's also something else in there too. So if you would like to present this to Mayor Wilson, I'm not sure if you might want to turn it around.
Oh, perfect.
It's a girl cut. It's a girl cut.
There you go. Thank you. I gotta put this on now, right?
You gonna put the show on too?
No.
I mean, it blends with the time.
It does, but unfortunately, the old man won't wear it well. All right, perfect. This is awesome. Congratulations, guys. Thank you. Congratulations. Did you get a picture? Oh, you want a picture of it? Okay.
Yes, that would be great. All right. Yeah, let's go about that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
All right, Coach, I promise next year when you come back for year 3, I will be wearing the medallions next year. You can. By the way, I don't know, as a civics lesson, if you just want to keep the young ladies here for the next couple of hours, we're going to have fun.
I tried, but they left. Thank you.
All right, next on the mayor's report is a list of upcoming events in the city of Roswell. Ask my colleague, Councilmember Lee Hills, to make the announcements.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So as always, I'd like to remind everyone about Roswell365.com, where you can go and find out what's coming up this weekend or next weekend. If you have something going on in your neighborhood or a nonprofit where you serve, or that you're just interested, you can go on the website, Roswell365.com, go to the top and register for a free account, and then you can upload pictures of your event or information about it and post it on this, what I would call, community bulletin board. But it's a great resource for the city, and it's growing every week. Want to bring your attention to quite a few things coming up. I feel like there's some feedback, forgive me. The Lavender Festival is back at Barrington Hall, Saturday, June 1st. That's from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There are over 60 local artists and vendors that'll be on campus. A lot of have lavender-oriented type wares, and then things that would be coordinating with the outdoors. So please stop by Barrington Hall next Saturday from 10 to 5. It's a drop-in, pop-in. I believe there's refreshments that you can purchase there as well. Also, for the young and young at heart, we have a slip and slide coming again to Lita Thompson Park. That's almost all the way west in West Roswell on Highway 92. That's Saturday, June 8th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's presented by our city of Roswell at the Arts Center West, which is at Lita Thompson Park. You can bring the whole family out, go slip and slide into the summer. The event is free, but tickets are required. So slide down one of two 200-foot slides or slip down the 50-foot slide. So you can have cool treats that are available for purchase there, and you can find more about that on Roswell365.com. We also have Music on the Hill coming up, which is the second Friday of the month, May through September, from 7 to 9 p.m. And that's right here on our beautiful grounds. June 14th, which is also Flag Day, is Music on the Hill's debut for the feature All the Locals, an Atlanta-based group praised for their effortlessly original and creative approach to songwriting. With soulful backbone, a rock and roll attitude, and shaky blues breakdown of heartfelt lyrics, these locals, including their unique horn selection, vibe, and best of Atlanta's real music image, will make your night. So these are hit songs for all ages. We also have another Alive in Roswell coming up. This is every third Thursday of the month, April through October. Our next one is June 20th. That's from 5 to 9, and you can certainly stay later, but you have to clear the streets after that. We've got music, we've got vendors. Of course, you can eat or drink at your favorite restaurant. You can have your kids run around in the heart of Roswell Park, and when it gets dark, the rest is up to you. So enjoy yourself, and we hope to see you out June 20th for the next Alive in Roswell. Also want to bring your attention to Roswell Riverside Sounds. This is every fourth Saturday, April through September, starting at 7:30. This is the longest running free outdoor concert series highlighting various musical genres and spotlighting original artists. The next Riverside Sounds takes place June 22nd with Paul McDonald. His music features poetic storytelling and irresistibly catchy melodies reminiscent of music legends like Rod Stewart, Bob Dylan, and also invoking echoes of a bygone era. Paul excels as a poet, visual artist, songwriter, dedicated to performer, and a formidable vocalist. So a lot of music on deck in Roswell, and of course we are just getting started in the city of Roswell for the summer season, so we hope to see you out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lee. And where is it everybody can go check out and post their stuff in the city? If they're a club, a restaurant, a church, a synagogue, where can you go post your stuff and where can you go find stuff?
Roswell365.com.
Roswell365.com. Thank you, Lee, very
Thank you.
much. All right, and also I want to thank, we have our public safety officials are multi-talented, our police chief and our fire chief, and I just want to thank our police chief, Jim Conroy, for taking care of the door. Thank you, Chief. Amazing service there. Appreciate that. All right, the last item on the mayor's report is the first reading of the mayor's FY 2024 six-month budget. This is a beginning of Roswell transitioning from a fiscal year beginning July 1st to a fiscal year beginning January 1st. As a consequence of that, Roswell is putting forward a six-month budget, basically extending the FY 24 budget that will end July 1st into the second 6 months of the calendar year of this year. And this is the first reading. David, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance adopting a budget for fiscal year 2024, 6 months, for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City, beginning July 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures from exceeding appropriations and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources, and amending the Code of Ordinances to effectuate such adoption. Wherefore, the Mayor and City Council intend to adopt a six-month budget for fiscal year 2024, 6 months, and capital programming for fiscal year 2024 in order to amend the city's future fiscal years to begin January 1st and to end December 31st of each year. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. The City of Roswell, Georgia hereby adopts an expenditure budget for fiscal year 2024, 6 month, said budget being described below and shown in Attachment A for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia. General Fund, $60,557,877. Confiscated Assets Fund, $1,920. E911 Fund, $2,030,280. Grant Funds, $8,363,984. Impact Fee Fund, $927,500. Hotel Motel Fund, $678,937. Auto Rental Excise Tax Fund, $157,500. Lita Thompson Fund, $40,243. Special Events Fund, $406,532. Capital Project Fund, $8,261,664. Debt Service Fund, $4,930,962. Water and Sewer Fund, $2,532,635. Stormwater Utility Fund, $2,154,134. Excuse me. Solid Waste Fund, $7,055,336. Participant Recreation Fund, $4,185,490. Workers' Compensation Fund, $538,470. Group Health Insurance Fund, $6,139,298. Risk Management Fund, $932,009. Fleet Services Fund, $1,303,060. And Information Technology Fund, $3,821,607, for a total of $115,019,438. A millage rate of 4.949 mils is estimated to be part of the proposed budget. This budget fixes the number of budgeted full-time positions of the city at 717. Mayor and council adopt a capital improvement programming for fiscal year 2024, 6 months, as attached hereto and incorporated herein as attachment B. This programming does not indicate any promise of appropriations for future years or unfunded projects. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into fiscal year 2024, 6 month of current fiscal year unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund fuel and utility contingency in an amount not to exceed $250,000. The city administrator or his or her designee is authorized to distribute funds reserved for the fuel or utility contingency to the various departments as necessary. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation into fiscal year 2024, 6 months of current fiscal year unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund grant match contingency in the amount not to exceed $250,000. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation of all approved capital projects, grant revenue, grant funding, as well as contingency funding that is unspent or uncollected and available as of June 30th, 2024. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation into fiscal year 2024 6 month of current fiscal year unspent funding for city administrator professional services, unspent funding for the employee wellness program, unspent funding for city's education assistance program, unspent funding for Roswell University, unspent funding for the police school zone safety project, unspent funding for legal services, and unspent funding for the election. Mayor and council further approve appropriation into fiscal year 2024 6 month of the audited balance of funding available in the confiscated assets fund. The city administrator or his or her designee may promulgate all necessary internal rules, regulations, and policies to ensure this budget ordinance is followed. And if approved, this will be the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Thank you for reading that ordinance. At this time, I'd like to ask Budget Manager Lynn Williams to come forward and to present the first reading of this budget. Welcome, Lynn.
Good evening. I apologize. I went and saw my nephew graduate from Harrison High School, so I may have caught something. So here we have our 6 month budget. We had our presentation on the 13th. We have today the first reading and then the second reading in June 10th. Just a quick agenda of what I'm going to cover. For the budget highlights, we have a 6 month budget. This is going to run from July 1st to December 31st to set the stage for Roswell to transition to a calendar fiscal year starting from January 1st through December 31st of 2025. This budget is balanced and it continues prioritization of public investments. We are continuing to re-envision how we deliver our services across the departments. This is a similar budget to what we had in the first 6 months of 2024. Just a quick highlight of what we have accomplished over the last couple of years. We have implemented a best-in-class compensation for police, for 911, and for fire. We have implemented year 1 and 2 of implementation of the full-time fire department from a part-time. We have also added 4 police positions dedicated to crimes against children. We have added $5 million for the Historic Parks and Gardens Activation and Maintenance Plan. And we continue to maintain the historic venues and grounds for public. We do have over $5 million in capital investment listed in this budget. For the all fund summary, the source of funds, as you see here, this is a 6 month budget, so it is smaller than what a 12 month budget would look like. On the left, you have what the 12-month budget looked like, and on the right, you have what we are doing for July 1st through December 31st. We are expecting excuse me one second. We are expecting that some of the things, such as property tax, would come in before January 1st. But sales tax is something that comes in monthly. So as you would see from the left to the right, is about half of what we would have collected in a full year. This is just to talk about some of our high-level revenues. This is our millage rate that goes along with the property tax. Since FY 2018, we have continued to drop that maintenance and operation millage rate. The only increase on here is because of the voter-approved bond referendum that you see in the last two columns. And here is a 10-year history of revenue that has come back to general fund to go along with those. The proposed budget includes the property tax millage rate based on the current millage rate. Do not need any additional millage rate in this October for the bond referendum for the 6-month budget. There is no change in the timing of the property tax bills. So when you see your property tax bill, it will still come at the same time. We will still set a millage rate later in this year after we receive the digest from Fulton County. Sales tax revenue. On here, you see what typically we have collected, and for the 6-month budget, you see about half of what we would have normally seen. And as you can see, the dotted line shows you approximately what we would have expected to see for a full year. Some other funds revenue assumptions. We did have a 7% in last year's budget, and we are proposing another 7% starting July 1st. For Stormwater Fund, we had a 10%, and July 1st, we would like a 10%. In Solid Waste, we had a 10%, and we're doing 10% again July 1st. The resolution for that will be on the next agenda. For the use of funds, this is where you will see that for the expenses, we would expect to see about roughly half of the expenses. The 3 largest departments for all funds are EPW, Recreation, and Police. For our full-time position history, we are proposing 3 additional positions, 1 in Information Technology IT, 1 in Facility Services, and 1 in Landscaping. For General Fund, I've got 3 charts. Source of funds, as you see on the left, that is what we had initially proposed and approved before we rolled back the rate. And so on the right, you see the new millage rate, or the millage rate that we are proposing for the 6-month budget. Sales tax is roughly half, and business taxes is about half. For use of funds, it is roughly half of what you will see from a usual year. The 3 largest departments within general fund, excluding the utilities, are Police, Recreation, and Fire. This is a quick summary of the general fund proposed as it was originally presented on May 13th. We had a beginning fund balance of $25 million, proposed revenue of 61.8, expenses of 60.56, fund balance reserve 25% of 26.26, remaining 25,000. These are some add deletes that have been sent to the budget office that have been compiled, and if that is the motion, we can add them to the motion tonight. So up here we have added 15 firefighters for half year of year 3. Reduce the contingency to fund that. and then 3 adjustments to capital below. That's a short list of the capital. With those changes, we would have a remaining fund balance of $117,000. And just a quick, I know David has already read off the ordinance. As you have been told, this would set the budget to do from July through December and would set us up, set the stage for Roswell to transition to a calendar fiscal year starting January 1st. This also sets the allocation by fund and by department, and it authorizes a number of full-time positions. And it establishes contingencies for such things as electric, gas, and for grants. It authorizes reappropriation into the next fiscal year for things such as capital, grants, contingency, and all of the things that David read off. So the next step, there's only one. The PDF is available on our website, and it is available within the finance department during business hours. And we will have another reading on June 10th, and that will be the adoption of the budget.
Lynn, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Appreciate all your hard work and the team, the works team, the budget team's hard work on this. I know it's been quite a lift, and I appreciate what you guys have gotten done. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, and thank you, Lynn. I would just like City Administrator Knighton, if you would speak to our audit firm and how they will handle this transition of the 6-month audit and our reviews just going forward until we get into the calendar year.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Related to how this 6-month period would be audited, we're currently, in fact, we have our audit firm on site today reviewing the traditional, what we'll call the 2024 A budget, the budget that we're concluding on June 30th. We will also have the audit firm separately and independently review the 6-month period as well to provide full openness of our budget process and financial outlook. And then once we transition into the FY 2025 budget, we'll have a separate audit for that budget year as well. So as we make this transition, we'll ensure that the public is fully apprised of the review of the traditional 2024 A budget, as well as the 6-month budget, and then certainly the 2025 budget as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Knighton. Thank you, Christine. Christine, any follow-up questions or comments? Thank you very much. Council, any additional thoughts, comments, or questions? Thank you, Council. At this time, I'll ask if any Roswell residents would like to weigh in on this particular issue. Yes, ma'am. Welcome. Janet, always nice to see you. Lovely hat. Thanks for joining us.
Willow Springs Drive. One question, I noticed it last 2 weeks ago when you presented this, Lynn. The water, stormwater management, and solid waste management. You showed an increase of 10%, is that correct? For the whole year, and then last time you mentioned another 10%, and you said it would continue. Does that mean we're gonna have a 20% increase in those rates in the next year, and continuing on adding 10% to the water, stormwater management, and solid waste management into infinity? Because it wasn't clear. And I saw 10%, 10%, and last time you mentioned it would continue. So my question is, if it's 10% and the inflation rate is less than 4%, why are we going to be charged 10% more for each of those services?
Lynn, do you want to answer that, or would you like someone else to answer it? You got it?
The water rates are already approved and based on a water rate study. And so that 7% was approved for last year, and it was approved for starting July 1st. So it's 7 and another additional 7. for the solid waste and stormwater, we have had a lot of large construction in stormwater that has used up the fund balance, and so we would like to continue. And we did 10% July 1st, and we would do another 10%, and that is based on the increase in construction costs still has not caught up with the fund balance. In solid waste, we had a large increase that, if anyone remembers, we had in committee that we would not do a large increase to our citizens at that time, and we have been progressively stepping that into. So it's 10% last year and an additional 10% this year. But it's because we're still trying to catch up with that waste management increase, and then we've got another increase on the new contractor that starts July of next year.
Thank you, Lynn. Hey, Brian, are you here? You want to address this as well? Okay. Yeah, I think the short answer is, and this is why I'll never be a very good politician, is yes, the cost of stormwater and solid waste will continue to increase, whether this elected body is in office or not. The next elected body will be faced with the same consequences of having to raise your stormwater and solid waste cost. And that is just a function of the marketplace. And the fact that we as a city, and you're going to see this with other local governing authorities and county governing authorities and state governing authorities from the federal standpoint is, particularly with relation to stormwater, is that there is a coming crisis on storm. And communities like ours, we're a 170-year-old community to be precise, with a tremendous amount of 30, 40, and 50-year-old inventory of homes. In many of those subdivisions, when they were built, there was not adequate storm planning put into those communities. And those kind of issues are coming home to roost. And I can tell you that Roswell is at the forefront, thanks to the leadership of people like Brian Watson, Sharon Izzo, Mr. Knighton, on trying to find stormwater solutions unique to a community, particularly a community of 100,000 people, that has a lot of 30 and 40 and 50-year-old inventory homes like mine, and saying, how do we solve a problem that we didn't, that was put in place really 30, 40, and 50 years ago? This problem is going to grow. I will tell you, just to juxtapose it from a financial perspective, we put it up, you would note that your cost, although you see percentages can be dangerous when you're talking numbers, your costs are still relatively low in relation to both your solid waste, your storm, and your water, and will continue to remain so. But I would be disingenuous to tell you or suggest at any time that there's not going to continue to be increases on those, because that is just a function of the marketplace and the needs that we're going to have to take care of our community to do things we haven't done in the past that we will have to do in the present and the future. Any other public comments from Roswell residents on this budget or questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment, Ms. Russell, your question, Ms. Russell. Thank you, Lynn. Council, any other additional thoughts, comments, or questions on this matter? I will not be with you in 2 weeks for the second reading, so if there's anything we want to discuss while I'm here, easy peasy. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Hills.
At a recent North Fulton Mayor's meeting, which is formally called Municipal Association meeting, the mayors get together, it's open to the public, and talk about different things going on between our cities. And Mayor Wilson asked, 2 meetings ago, it might have been 3, he was running it up the flagpole with his fellow mayors. And just so you know, it was, I don't believe Mountain Park was there, but Alpharetta, Milton, Johns Creek, Sandy Springs City Manager was there. And he said, what do you think? Or what schedule are you on? And they're on the same schedule that we are. So July 1st through June 30th. And Mayor Wilson said, well, we're thinking about moving it to the calendar year. And their jaws all dropped and said, I can't believe you've got the guts to do it, and I wish we were doing that. So I want to tell you, our sister cities are really envious about this, to get things shored up on an easy to understand schedule as far as the beginning of the year, the end of the year, and where the money's spent during that year. So I applaud it. I'm in full support, and I just want to let you know I experienced the response from the other mayors, and they're green with envy. So we're once again forging ahead. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee, very much. And it's thanks really to the leadership of our senior executive team led by Mr. Knight and this council, and for having the leadership and the courage to move forward and make things happen. All right, any additional thoughts, comments, or questions on the budget? Being that there are none, I will ask Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to motion that we approve the FY 2024 six-month budget for the City of Roswell in the amount of $115,019,438. This is the first reading.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All in favor, please raise your hands. Let the record state that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next is the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Being that there are no comments or questions from council on the consent agenda, thank you, Lynn, by the way, very much. Thank you. Where are you guys going? Where you get your money and you're moving out? All right. The consent agenda is next. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions on the consent agenda? Being that there are none, I'll ask any of our Roswell residents if they have any comments or questions on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. I come back to council. Any additional thoughts, comments, or questions? Being that there are not, I'll ask if there's a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion from Councilmember Johnson to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Sells. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Let the record state that it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item, as we go to the Community Development Department, our liaison is Councilmember William Mortland. The department head is Michelle Alexander, with Assistant Community Development Director Jackie Dybel. This is part of the regular agenda, and the first item is an item that myself and both the city attorney are going to make a couple of comments on. So this is an appeal, if I understand this correctly, you correct me, David, this is an appeal from the DRB, correct? So this matter is a little different than what usually comes before council. And usually we limit comment to a maximum of 5 minutes. I have met with council representing both sides beforehand. I will allow council to each make a presentation for up to 15 minutes for their respective sides. Let me share with everyone in the audience and everyone watching at home and listening that the council is heavily engaged and probably much more knowledgeable about this issue than most of you would probably surmise. I think you would be very comfortable in knowing how well the council is up to speed on this issue. That being said, we are going outside of our usual purview a little bit and allowing each side who has counsel legal representation to make a 15-minute presentation. At that time, I will also talk to you in the audience about those of you who want to make comments in reference to this matter. So, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an appeal from the Design Review Board under Section 13.6.15B of the UDC. The council's decision is based on the record. It's also based on the substantial evidence, so if there is any evidence to support the decision of the DRB, this council is to uphold the decision. Both sides have agreed to reserve any objections, and the city hereby acknowledges such, so that they may be preserved on appeal from this decision. Thank you, Mayor.
Any questions from council on that matter? Very good. All right. Jackie, this time, it's now your show. Will, would you like to take this over? I apologize. I didn't mean to step on your toes, Willie.
No, sir. First item on the community development, item number 1 is 2024-1315, the Design Review Board Appeal, Cochran Farms HOA, presented by Jackie Dybel.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the appeal by the Cochran Farms Homeowners Association from the Design Review Board related to 715 Hardscrabble Road, St. Michael's Catholic Church. As stated, this is the appeal from the March 5th, 2024 Design Review Board decision of application 2023-4154. The Cochran Farms HOA submitted the appeal to the city related to the approval of the Design Review Board application for a new sanctuary and parking lot construction at St. Michael's Church, located at 715 Hardscrabble Road. An aerial picture showing you where St. Michael's Catholic Church is, Mount Oliver, the Roswell High School, and Cochran Farms subdivision. This is a little bit of a larger view to show you where Chafin Road is, Coleman Drive, I'm sorry, and then the church, the Roswell High School field, as you can see. This is the site plan that was presented to the Design Review Board at the March 5th meeting, showing a 14,000 square foot sanctuary. 52 new parking spaces were being provided in the parking lot at this, with this project. And this is the project that was approved by the Design Review Board at that meeting. The rendered site plan showing you the buffer area that is to the west, buffer area, and then the area along the street, along Coleman Drive, the buffer there, and a gate that was proposed by the applicant and approved by the Design Review Board. Here's a zoomed in look for the rendered site plan, so you can clearly show the gated entry off of Coleman Drive into the parking lot there for St. Michael's, and a little bit extra, trying to zoom it in so you can see the actual site plan. The DRB did approve this proposed sanctuary and parking lot addition to St. Michael's Church at their March 5th meeting with these conditions. A plat combining the two parcels, 715 Hardscrabble Road and 0 Coleman Drive, to be recorded prior to the issuance of an LDP. Additional evergreen shrubs, such as arborvitae, to be added, allowing the building bump out at the east elevation of the building to add additional screening. All department comments shall be met. A fence shall be installed along the entire property line on Coleman Drive. The material to match the fence shown in the submitted rendering of the gate, or match the fence either to the east or to the west across the street. The fence is to be installed prior to the issuance of a CO. Construction traffic will be limited to Hardscrabble Road, except when working on the sewer connection as directed by the Roswell DOT. The applicant has stated the gate at the Coleman Drive entrance will remain locked except during mass times and church events. So this is the approval from the Design Review Board at the March 5th meeting. Staff does not have a recommendation, as this is an appeal, and that is staff's presentation.
Thank you.
Questions for staff?
Jackie, thank you. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions on the presentation from Ms. Dival? At this juncture, I think we'll move forward. Next, Jackie, I'm sure, hopefully we don't have to call on you too much. Hopefully you get to sit there in your seat and just enjoy the show. I believe we have a legal representation for the Cochran Farms HOA. I'll ask them to come up first and make their presentation. You have 15 minutes. Welcome, sir. Please share with who you are and your firm. And
good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Adam Rosen. I'm an attorney with Rosen, and Riley in Marietta, 248 Roswell Street. I'm here tonight representing the Cochran Farms Homeowners Association, the Heiser family, and a number of other residents, a few of which you'll hear from tonight, who live on Coleman Drive and in the Cochran Farms subdivision. We're here tonight, as was correctly stated, appealing on appeal and in dissatisfaction with the Design Review Board decision approving the applicant's request, and the serious concern that they have about what impact the expansion, and particularly the access to Coleman Drive, will have to their enjoyment of their property on Coleman Drive and Cochran Farm subdivision. A couple of weeks ago, you had a request from me. I didn't realize it was going to be as timely as it was. I was in the hospital delivering a baby, or assisting in delivering a baby, at the time of the last hearing. Thank you for that courtesy. We were prepared with another attorney here, but obviously we wanted us to be here and be present, so thank you for that. Thank you to the church for being considerate of that. One thing that came out of that discussion with council was fine-tuning the scope of what our appeal truly is about, and it is the access to Coleman Drive. And so we have not done anything or said anything voice any objection to the other elements of the application. We're not here to stop the church from the expansion that they wish to have. It's the access to Coleman Drive that has been a concern for these residents throughout this entire process. There are some other conditions that came out of the Design Review Board decision that the homeowners are happy with, and you'll hear a little bit more about that from Mr. Heiser and some of the other neighbors. The specific issue that's remaining that is the most concerning for them is the access to Coleman Drive. It's an issue that has been addressed by councils in the past and the Design Review Board in the past, and a couple of those examples you hear from us tonight and why that decision from the past should stay the same with your decision in reviewing the Design Review Board. A couple things I want to show again from some of which Jackie presented, but what we presented to you or to the Design Review Board, a little bit of a different perspective outlining the residential homes that make up those folks that are here tonight and that are a part of this appeal. We are the residential neighbors to this church. We are the residential neighbors that will have all of the impact from the access to Coleman Drive. You can see the dead-end street there of Coleman Drive, that rear access for the church that's being proposed. That is entirely our residential access and our residential use for the specific residential homeowners that are impacted by this decision. The way that the traffic will circulate as it comes out of the church, it's coming directly down Coleman Drive. That affects Cochran Farms, that affects all of the homeowners on Coleman Drive. That is the specific concern that they have. Their use and enjoyment of this specifically residential street and residential subdivision that will be created by what the applicant proposes, the 14,000 square foot sanctuary building, increasing parking spaces to 130 with 500 plus seats in the sanctuary. Significantly different than what's existing and significantly different than what's existing in the actual use, with it being directing traffic to Coleman Drive. There is some history of it being used without permission onto Coleman Drive. That's another concern that they have, that it's already being abused, and one of the reasons why we're even more fearful for what's to come with an expansion with the direct access to Coleman Drive. The condition from the Design Review Board that limits the access to church activities is good, it's helpful, but it presents problems of how we define that and what that means. And so if this council is not willing to limit the access only to fire department, only to emergency access, we would ask that it be restricted for church activities, and we have some definition of that we'll identify to you that we've discussed. One of the residents that's here tonight will go through a little bit more of the history for this property, for Coleman Drive, and the history of access along Coleman Drive. In 1996, and I'll show you an excerpt from it. In 1996, the Design Review Board considered in the earlier phases of initial construction of the church. You can see, thank you, the board member, Mr. Knopfling here, says churches can be built in any district, but said when they are built in residential areas, the neighbors must be considered. It's 1996. In 2000, the Design Review Board again considered, or at that time considered, a master plan for the church with a lot of discussion about access to Coleman Drive and what that master plan should include. Specifically eliminated the proposed access to Coleman Drive. So when this came up again for these residents, knowing that it had been decided before and considered before on a, at that time, smaller scale, but with proposed expansion, access to Coleman Drive was a problem then, and it's still a problem now, and previously decided. Plan approved at the time, and this is all part of what in the agenda and the review for this application from the history of it. The plan approved at the time, Coleman Drive here. No curb cut, no driveway. This is the final plan that was approved, specifically following the deletion of access to Coleman Drive. And now these residents are being asked to deal with the access to Coleman Drive again in an expanded fashion. And you can also see the future sanctuary proposed on this plan, and even recognizing the future expansion decided at that time that access to Coleman Drive was not appropriate. At the Design Review Board hearing, we stressed to that board, unlike what has been said, we're not trying to make this a case that it's not. We know this is not a rezoning, but the Design Review Board does have specific criteria and guidelines. 13.6.10 and 13.6.11 discuss considering conditions to impose and the discretion to do so when hearing an application, and what they, in that decision, having to comply with the UDC and the design guidelines. One issue you'll hear a little bit more about from Mr. Heiser is the substandard nature of Coleman Drive being less than a 50-foot right-of-way, which is standard, and the actual paving being less than 20 feet. Allowing access onto that substandard road was our position that was not complying with the UDC and the design guidelines. The Design Review Board has the ability to impose those conditions. You as a council have the ability to oppose those conditions restricting the access to Coleman Drive. Heard before about your decision being whether there was any evidence to support the Design Review Board's decision. We talked a lot at that hearing about, and you'll hear some of that again, about the concerns for increased traffic, the safety for the children and the families that ride bikes, that walk up and down the street without sidewalk, these issues that were voiced at that time of what happens from allowing access to Coleman Drive. We didn't hear anything about why there was some urgent need or some future need of having access onto Coleman Drive. So we believe that there is no evidence that that part of the application should have been approved. If you look at their proposed site plan, instead of needing the access to Coleman Drive, you can see that they can easily create an internal traffic circulation plan within the property. There's no need for the additional access to Coleman Drive. We look at, and having gone through the process to have church schools approved, which is a serious concern of these neighbors, we've had to formulate traffic circulation plans for stacking and queuing for pickup and drop-off. That can be done on this site without Coleman Drive. So you start to see all of these reasons why the access to Coleman Drive not only is damaging to these residents, but not necessary. It's a convenience. And when you're considering the conditions that can be imposed and balancing how that impacts these two sides, you're dealing with convenience versus safety and enjoyment concerns. A lot of the history, the remaining history from a zoning or other entitlement perspective of this property in this area deals with the traffic to the high school. And council knows some of that and historically has heard that. That's not our issue. This is a separate and additional issue. That is something that they have dealt with and will continue to deal with. Hopefully won't, but that is not why we're here. We know that that's a separate concern. What we do by allowing access to Coleman Drive for the church is only exacerbate that if that issue is not put to rest. The access that was left, with the site plan that was left as the final plan with no access to Coleman Drive, has now become a curb cut that somehow mysteriously has appeared on Coleman Drive with no record from the city of it being of a curb cut being approved for a driveway access there. So when we're looking at whether we're taking away the right to access a public road, we're not, because we don't have an approved access. We're limiting the access to that public road because of a condition that can be imposed by the Design Review Board, and therefore you, to protect these residents. So we should not be looking at it like there's existing access there, so we can't take that away, or we can't deprive them of that right because they have it, because that access that's there, if anything, and it's a curb cut in the sidewalk without any additional driveway to it, with no record of the city approving any access. So our request is to limit access to fire only. We understand that the fire department needs access to Coleman Drive in emergency circumstances, and we've not objected to that. If this council is not willing to limit access to fire only, our request would be, as we stated a couple of weeks ago, to allow the rest of the application to move forward, let them move forward with the design and the project, and let this council have a traffic study be required so that we better understand the impact of what happens when you add this many more folks go into this property on a more regular basis, and what does that do to Coleman Drive? That's not something that's been done. One of your standards for traffic studies being conducted is if over 100 trips are added at any hour of the peak morning or afternoon time. We know we'll have well more than that with over 500 seat congregation meeting at any one time. If that is not something the council is willing to do, we would ask that the access be conditioned. Instead of the general church-only activities without any definition to it, we would ask that these conditions be imposed. This provides them with access to Coleman Drive for the most important time to them, presumably, with Sunday Mass. So number one, limited and restricted by a gate, the access gate to remain locked and closed except for permitted days and times, remain closed Monday through Saturday, permitted to be open for Sunday Mass services with a specific time frame, and no access for any current or future school activities. Again, restricting what the church does is one thing, but restricting the potential addition of a new and additional use of school is something that is also even more appropriate for the council to condition. So we would ask that that condition be included in those as well. We thank you for hearing this. We know this is a little bit out of the ordinary to hear on an appeal in these circumstances, but this is of grave concern for these residents and what this will do to their enjoyment of their property. And I've asked them to limit their time and what they have to say to you. We've tried to set out different topics for each one, so I'll let you hear from them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Thank you for representing the Cochran Farms HOA. At this time, I'll ask counsel for the church to come forward and make their presentation, and you have 15 minutes as well.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ethan Underwood. I'm an attorney with the firm of Miles Hansford. Our address is 178 South Main Street in Alpharetta, Georgia. It's in Suite 320. This is a bit of an oddity of procedure under Georgia law, and it's what's called a quasi-judicial hearing. And it's odd because we have to ask you as elected officials to take off your hat and say, well, I'm not actually sitting as a legislator. I'm sitting as a judge. And because of that, the standard review is very different than when folks come to you in your typical capacity as a city council member. Consequently, to be honest, it may appear that we're up here over-lawyering this thing with court reporters and having to raise these things, but the problem I've got and my clients have is we have to raise any objection now, or it may be barred at some higher level. So I hope you will bear with us with that. So respecting some formalities, I would like to tender a materials packet. I believe my associate, Bryson Mercer, will be presenting that and entering that into evidence if there's no objection. I think what's important when you're considering an appeal, this is not a do-over. And I think the public needs to understand that. This is not a mulligan on the Design Review Board's decision. This is when the City Council has to sit and look at the Design Review Board and say, did they do their job? Now, the appeal process is laid out in your city charter, and when it talks about being, and you can see it on the display here, Roswell's Charter Section 2.216 says decisions are based on the record. Also in your Unified Development Code in 13.615 says it's based on the record. So what does that mean? It means, one, no new evidence can be considered. I heard a lot of new claims and saw a lot of new maps and heard a lot of new arguments and requests for new conditions that never appeared at the Design Review Board. Those can't be considered at this level. So not only that, City Council is not even to consider whether you disagree with the Design Review Board. You may, personally, but what you're tasked to do is see, did the DRB err in reviewing the matter? As your council stated, substantial evidence is interpreted under Georgia law as meaning any evidence. So if there's any evidence in the record below, not tonight, in the record below that says DRB did what they were supposed to do, you have to affirm their decision. And this is very clear. This was a city council decision of a Macon Bibb County sitting in a quasi-judicial decision in this case that cited, City Council must affirm the decision if there's any evidence to support it, even when the party challenging the fact finder's conclusions presented evidence during the initial proceedings that conflicted with those conclusions. But with that, we do have to lay out our claim. First off, case law is very clear that bodies sitting in an appellate procedure cannot take judicial notice of ordinances. That sounds really weird because I'm saying, well, you can't take judicial notice of your own ordinances. Well, I have to raise that issue. The law is not quite clear as to whether that applies to quasi-judicial boards, so I've got to raise that. So we're saying they didn't tender a certified copy of your Unified Development Code at the Design Review Board. There's nothing to consider here tonight, so we feel that's grounds for dismissal. Secondly, we have submitted evidence, as we said, and we put on the record, only what was limited to the Design Review Board. We'd submit to you that the appellants lack standing, and we'll get into that more. That standing standard is incorporated not only in your city charter, but also in your Unified Development Code. With that, they've asserted no basis which to permit lawful review of the Design Review Board's decision. And even if you were to find that is the case, the evidence that the Design Review Board considered justifies their decision. That satisfies that any evidence standard. And again, finally, we do have to assert St. Michael's Church, who we are representing, asserts its claims and reserves all of its rights under the Georgia and state constitutions, including under the Arlupa Act. So with that, what is standing? Standing requires that anybody who's going to appeal a decision from a lower tribunal, they have to suffer a substantial interest, and that they'd have to suffer special damages. Well, what's that? Georgia Supreme Court's told us that. They've said that standing requires that applicants claiming to be aggrieved of quasi-judicial decisions must have a substantial interest. Substantial interests are not held by parties merely casting themselves as champions of the community. Well, what does that mean? They get very down in the weeds. They say they must have, in fact, presented evidence of interest of real importance that will bear the brunt of the changed conditions. Substantial interest must be in danger of suffering some special damage or injury. Such damages are not incurred by, quote, persons in the general community who may merely suffer inconvenience, such as increased traffic in a central business district. If you look at the record from the Design Review Board, that's the only thing that was claimed, was said people didn't like traffic, and we get that. I'm a zoning attorney. I hear it every day. You're elected officials. You hear it every day. We don't like traffic coming in here. But that's all that was raised at the Design Review Board. No one presented any special evidence that said, here's an appraiser, and we'll get into this more, with testimony that said this is how it's going to decrease my property values because of the traffic. None of that evidence was presented. That's what the law requires be presented in order to have a claim and to assert standing. Now, we also heard that we're going to hear from quote-unquote other appellants, but respectfully, you can't consider that testimony. The appeal that was filed to you by Mr. Rosen named two appellants. It said Cochran Farms Homeowners Association and Charles Heiser and Kimberly Anheuser. It did have the words others in there. That doesn't pass legal muster. So we got to say, okay, who's got standing? Who are the people before you tonight? It's the Cochran Farms HOA and Mr. Heiser. This is demonstrative evidence of showing where the Heiser's property is located and where the Cochran property is located. There is not a single case that I'm aware of in Georgia where a court has found an aggrieved property owner has standing to challenge an ordinance if they're not an adjacent property owner. Neither of these folks are adjacent property owners. So therefore, no appellant has a substantial interest in the DRB decision to raise it for you. Again, this is getting into special damages. Let's assume that they do have that first test of the standard. The mere increase in traffic congestion adjacent to one's property as a result of improvements erected on nearby property is something, and the attendant inconvenience resulting therefore, which are damages suffered alike by all property owners similarly situated, does not give to one individual such a substantial interest in the decision as to grant standing. Such an inconvenience, a condition incident to urban living, the mere result of normal urban growth and development. But what's also key is the second paragraph. Establishment of special damages requires testimony of a real estate appraiser, traffic engineer, land planner, or other expert witness at a fact hearing. Not tonight, but at the design review board. That didn't happen. There was no evidence presented to them of that. So as stated, with no evidence presented to the design review board, the only thing that they could consider is what did the staff say? The record shows only testimony, again, from the neighbors who are opposed to this, objecting to additional traffic. We understand that, but that's not enough. So therefore, they've failed to meet the requirements of standing based upon special damages. Not only that, if you look at the appeal letter, there's no reason for appeal. It just says we appeal. It doesn't give a reason for saying that there's a deficiency. Now, we heard some new evidence tonight for the first time, but that's because they've recognized the deficiency in their appeal. Should have been in the appeal, should have been at the design review board, but it wasn't. So all that we've heard so far is we want a hearing before the city council. So I understand your charter says you must grant it, but it is certainly not enough evidence to overturn the decision. And if you look at, again, citing the record in the appeal, appellants merely allege they are an aggrieved party who will suffer special damages, but they put on no proof of that. Moreover, they've not raised any objection under the Unified Development Code until tonight. You just heard Mr. Rosen say, well, we think it's a substandard road. Didn't come up at DRB, didn't show up in their letter, so therefore it can't be considered by City Council tonight. Next, even if you were to say, okay, fine, we're going to get past stages 1 and 2, what did the DRB do? The evidence that was presented by the church to the design review board certainly satisfied your criteria, and therefore that causes the City Council to have to affirm that. They submitted all required materials for the design, a major design review. Staff deemed that to be complete. Not only that, staff recommended approval of that major plan, and the design review board approved it with condition. Now, staff already showed you these. We wanted to make sure that we got them into the evidence. We're certainly willing to answer any questions you have about specifics. But the question becomes, and we've got to put on the record, why is the design review board looking at this in the first place? Well, your Unified Development Code in 1363 says that you've got two types of plans, minor, major. If it's over 5,000 square feet, triggers a major design, and it ends up going to the design review board. Okay, we can follow the code there. UDC section 3610. We put in bold what we think is important here. The components of a major design plan, which we acknowledge this is a major design plan because it's over 5,000 square feet, that have, so the components of a major design plan that have been determined to meet the applicable sections of the UDC by the zoning director cannot be used as a basis for denial by the planning commission. Okay? Now let's look at this as a review by the zoning director. Subsection 3, if after the internal and external review, which your staff looks at all major reviews, the zoning director finds the major design plan meets all applicable requirements of the UDC, the application will be certified as complying and then moves on to the design review board. In short, it would never have, the plan would never have gotten to the DRB if your staff hadn't said it was complete and complied with the Unified Development Code. And that is the standard. So what approval does the design review board? Recommendations of the zoning director, compliance with the applicable requirements of the UDC, and substantial compliance with the most relevant set of design standards. Again, I want to reiterate, this application would have never gotten to the DRB if all of those standards were not satisfied. We see that in the staff report, page 2 of the staff report. Proposed design of the site and building. This is the staff report issued March 5th, 2024. It's in your evidential packets. Proposed design of the site and building meets the design guidelines for civic and institutional buildings. Page 4, staff recommends approval with conditions. Page 5 and 6, all departments recommend approval. And finally, I think this is the DRB report. It's approved with conditions. The transcripts don't show any testimony of experts saying, staff, you're wrong. There was no expert with testimony that was presented, even as part of the appeal. No affidavits, nothing attached to that. The Design Review Board considered the evidence presented. They approved the major plan as is part of their authority. And importantly, we've heard for the first time Mr. Rosen raise concern and saying, well, there's no record of an access cut on Coleman Drive. We were discussing that with the architect earlier. That access drive appears to have been here for at least 20 years. But even if it wasn't appropriately approved, it was approved by the Design Review Board. So that decision, again, goes back to Design Review Board said access to Coleman Drive is appropriate. We're going to put conditions on it. Staff said it meets all criteria. Respectfully, you all have to affirm that decision if there's any evidence to justify that. So in conclusion, as stated, we've objected to evidence that's been presented by the appellants. We object to their standing on appeal. We assert that there's been no valid basis to permit the lawful review of the decision. And even if there were, the DRB acted appropriately in approving this. The DRB approved the access drive onto Coleman with the conditions that allow the church to use as they want to. And the record and your staff show that this petition meets all applicable requirements of the UDC. So we respectfully ask that you affirm the decision of the Design Review Board, and we'll reserve any time we have remaining. We appreciate the time, and we're happy to answer questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood, representing St. Michael's Church. Also appreciate Mr. Rosen representing the Cochran Farms HOA. The night was gave a little bit of leeway that usually gave some extra time to, since both sides hired counsel, legal counsel to represent them, to make a case here in front of this elected body. Mr. Underwood is exactly correct. This is not a body of jurisprudence. This is a body of elected officials who govern through creating ordinances and laws for the city and not necessarily acting as jurists. Nonetheless, we have this matter before us. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the very simple matter before the city council today. Mr. Davidson, would you please read the matter before the city council?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is an appeal from the DRB. The appeal is to be considered on the record, and if there is any substantial evidence to uphold the DRB's decision, this council is to uphold that decision. The Georgia courts have determined that substantial evidence means any evidence. So if you find any evidence on the record from the DRB to uphold their decision, you are required technically to uphold their decision.
And that this hearing by the city council this evening is basically reviewing the information that was reviewed by the DRB. It is not reviewing any new information. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
All right. So council, any thoughts or questions on that? All right. So I say that I'm guessing there are a lot of people that want to come speak on this tonight. David, would you read that again? Because I'm going to, if you come up tonight and you bring up new information that was not part of what was presented to the DRB, I'm going to say it's not allowed because the council can't hear that.
So the council's decision is to be based on the record from DRB, and they should make their decision based on whether there is substantial evidence to uphold the DRB's decision. Courts have interpreted that to mean if there is any evidence to uphold the DRB's decision, this council should uphold the decision.
At this time, I will ask for no further comments from council. The one thing I would say to Mr. Underwood is that from terms of standing, any Roswell resident has standing in this particular artifice, this body. This body belongs to Roswell residents, and therefore they have the full right and authority to speak on a matter if they so choose. At this time, let me ask by a show of hands. How many of you are to speak on behalf of Cochran Farms HOA? By show of hands. And how many of you, and are all of you Roswell residents? And how many of you are here to speak on behalf of St. Michael's Church by show of hands? Very good. All right. And please be advised that if you're not presenting new information, if it's new information that was outside of what was at DRB, I will simply just say you can't address the body any further. Does everybody understand that? All right. Yes, sir?
Time left, is there any?
No, sir, your time is done. Thanks very much. Your time is done. Thank you very much. All right. Now, at this time, I'll ask for any Roswell residents that would like to address this matter. Yes, sir. In the black and white shirt. Yes, sir. Please come up and tell everybody your name and where you live in Roswell. Welcome. Yes, sir. In 5 minutes, limited to 5 minutes of comments.
My name's David Manal.
And by the way, if you would, do me a favor, address the council, please, sir.
Council?
Yes, sir. And if you'll just speak, stand right there in the middle.
Okay. So I can't look at the residents?
No, sir.
Okay. Mayor, council members, fellow residents, my name's David Manella. I live at 110 Cochran Farms Drive in Roswell. I am the one person, the one family that is impacted the most by this because I live on the corner of Cochran Farms Drive and Coleman Drive. So I am right there. What I want to go back to is one of the comments and one of the phrases that you all mentioned, that you want Roswell to be the place to live for families. Well, one thing that I'm going to focus on, that the Design Review Board also focused on, but they didn't get right, is the issue of safety. I know all of you have families. I know all of you have relatives, have friends that have kids that may be 4 years old, 5 years old, they may be in high school. This is about safety. The first thing about safety that the Design Review Board did not get right. Number one, if you use that road, that Coleman Drive, and you are going in two different cars, you're going the different direction, you cannot pass each other. The road is so narrow that when I go down that road and there's another car, I have to peel off to the side of the road to the grass to be able to because we're going to crash. And so that's something that did not get caught by the Design Review Board that I think is essential in this whole process. Number two, pets. There are more than 50 dogs that use that road, that Coleman Drive road, and are walked by their owners. I can tell you the names of all these dogs. Those dogs don't have a clockwork of when they can and can't go. They want to go. There are kids, there are more than 60 school kids from Roswell High School that walk up and down that road in the morning and in the afternoon. They don't have a sidewalk. Again, this road is so narrow that there is no way to walk safely when there are two cars there. There's no way. Another thing, our residents, our families who live on Cochran Farms Drive, we picked that neighborhood because it was a nice neighborhood and it was safe. When you allow traffic, could be 50 new cars, could be 100 new cars for this school that's going in. You cannot promise me at all that this will be safe for our families to walk, to these kids to ride their bikes. That is absolutely essential in this whole process. And the other thing I want to say is about quality of life related to safety. You know, I love Roswell because it's a great place to be. But if the city council and the Design Review Board decide to pick something else over safety, that really makes me think a lot about where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much for your comments. Jackie, can you come up here for a second? Can you come up here? Thank you, Jackie. All right, next Roswell resident, just here in the front. Welcome. Please share with us your name and where you live in Roswell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Mike Agurkis. I own a business on Canton Street, been here for 20 years. My children go to Queen of Angels School, and I own the property to the southeast of the church, 500 Coleman Drive, right there on Coleman Drive. So a little bit of context to what we've been talking about, and part of what we brought up during this limited access during the original objection to the design review and then the subsequent one in March is the history associated with limiting access to that road and keeping that residential character. Prior to 1950, Hackett Road, which runs right through the middle of my property, dead-ended into Coleman Drive. That access was cut off in order to maintain that residential character. In the 70s, the St. Michael's Church, right to the next to St. Michael's is Mount Olive Baptist Church. The road right, Coleman Drive used to go right through that cemetery connecting to Hardscrabble. They shut that off in the 1970s in order to prevent through traffic, again, to protect that residential character. Roswell High School, we discussed that earlier and that being an issue. In 1990, when the school was built, they actively chose not to cut a drive, the other civic property on that piece, from Roswell High School onto Coleman Drive, again, to help maintain that residential character of the street. When the church first proposed the original proposal from the Design Review Board in 1996, Bill Nothlin, who was, many of you may know from...
Michael, I have to interrupt. This was not part of the DRB presentation.
Bill Nothlin was specifically discussed during the opening comments from Adam. So
From the attorney, that's not applicable. It's just what was presented during the DRB.
okay, DRB, I can move on to that. We specifically discussed the cemetery at the end of Coleman Drive and the gated access. Father Denal, specifically in that appeal or in that discussion that came through from 1996, made the comment about maintaining the residential character of the back end of that street. He specifically said, and I'm just quoting from the minutes from the meeting, the church objected to, or excuse, that's another piece that I'll talk about here in a second. A cemetery look to Coleman Drive, for the reasons not placing the fence on that street, which came up during the meeting, the fence on the street specifically said a cemetery look, or trying to prevent a cemetery look to Coleman's side of the street is expressly not desired. It allows the cemetery to be situated, therefore, in a more discreet manner, thus not changing the character of the land across the Coleman side. Coleman Drive, again, and I've mentioned this repeatedly during my objections through all of these meetings, is a quiet residential street. We do worry about that extended traffic that comes on there. My children ride their bikes on the street. That is something that we objected to during the beginning. Design Review specifically mentioned that they didn't even think they had the authority to limit that access. So they didn't even understand what their abilities were and what their abilities weren't during that process, and they ended up getting somewhat steamrolled by the attorneys. And so whatever appeal that there is, if you review the minutes from the meeting, which is specific to what we talked about, I don't think they understood how much they could actually limit what was going on during that process. And so that's my objection. That's where I am in the process. So
Thank you, Michael.
thank you guys listening.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to speak next? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Council, Mayor, thanks for having us this evening. My name is Charles Heiser. I live at 180 Cochran Farms Drive. I'm here to represent my wife and myself, as well as Cochran Farms HOA. We are contiguous with the church, and we do have a right to say. We are residents of Roswell, and we oppose any access on the Coleman. We offered up a very simple solution that we have a fire access gate and a knock box installed on the Coleman to limit the traffic. I don't know why we didn't have a traffic study done. We'd be willing to pay for half of that to help mitigate this issue. I understand you guys got rules and you follow them and all that kind of stuff, but I think this is a little bit out of the framework here. I issued, I sent in a memo in January to Jackie, and it covered all of our objections. Our objections were real simple. We never objected to the church, never. You know, if they want to build their church, that's fine. It was on their original plans from 2000. That's fine. We objected to not having a fence, not having proper landscaping, which were addressed, and it's part of the record now. And our other one was simply that entrance onto Coleman. It's a 40-foot right-of-way street, 18-foot of pavement, no curb, no gutter, no sidewalk. It is a country road that services the 15 families in Cochran Farms and services the 8 families that live off of Coleman Drive. That's what we're talking about here, is our road that services our properties. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. This is how we get to our properties. They have a choice. They can come on Hardscrabble and go out on Hardscrabble. And, you know, that's our appeal. It's just that simple. You know, we talk about being the best family city in America. Wholeheartedly agree. And we feel that this would limit, you know, if you allow the limit on that access, that would push us to the forefront. The other thing is we gave some additional conditions that Adam covered on, you know, if we go someplace else. It really comes down to who's going to police this. Is it me? Do I have to police it? I don't think that's my job. You know, we say limit to church activities. What does that mean? They have mass every day. So that access should be open every day. So, you know, that's not helping. So, you know, I leave it to you guys, and you know, we put this in your hands. So I don't have anything else to say. Thank you. You guys got any questions of me?
Charles, thank you very much. Council, any questions for Mr. Hazel? No, thank you, sir, very much. Who'd like to speak next? Yes, sir, in the back. Welcome. Please share everybody with your name and where you live.
Yep, my name's Jason Guthrie. I live at 160 Cochran Farms Drive, and a lot of people know me as the dog walker. I've got a dog. I take that dog out. I've got 5 kids and a dog, and I'm always out in the neighborhood. People from the church know me. Walk through there, cut through. I'm one of the guys that cut through with the dog. A lot of people walk there. I'm just asking to do the right thing. I think, again, everybody can agree we're not fighting with the church. It looks like a beautiful facility. We just don't want the extra traffic on Cochran Farms. I mean, it's plain and simple. I think we all make mistakes. It looks like, again, I don't have any fancy paperwork or pictures or anything like that. I'm just telling you that extra traffic on that road, you've been on that road. I've seen some of your councilors on that road. You know it's not a regular road. There's no sidewalks again. It's amazing that we're blessed enough to have a school bus come down that road. How that bus gets down that road in the morning is a miracle sometimes. But I'm just asking you to do the right thing. I think, again, we should be able to come to an agreement. It just, you know, that was an oversight that we shouldn't have access to that road. The church is doing great. I see a lot of different cars from the church coming in, a lot of different states, little counties. If you ever try to take a shortcut, I've had people come down that road and ask me, can I get to Roswell High School this way? I've had buses come down from DeKalb County, not knowing the directions. So again, accidents happen. I just don't want an accident to happen on that road with so many young kids, and that's all.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, in the back. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Please share with everyone your name and where you live in Roswell.
My name is Jeremy Greenwell. I live at 145 Cochran Farms Drive.
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Yes, my concern is again, safety. We've lived there for 12 years. I've got 2 boys that are still in the home. We too have animals, and we use that road now. It's the only way in or out. It's the only way to get to our neighborhood. When we've seen some cars back up on that road because of carpooling or whatever, or trying to use it as a cut through over there to Roswell or something like that to pick up their kid, there would be no way to get an emergency vehicle or for a first responder to get to our neighborhood. No possible way. There's definitely no way to get a fire truck back there. And so I'm surprised that that even got through a review process, because that is a significant, we just 2 months ago had an elderly person collapse. And what would happen if we couldn't, you know, if the EMS or the fire department or the police couldn't react to that? And so that's my major concern, is it's our only means of ingress and egress. That's it. We have no other way to get in or out. And if there's some sort of church activity that involves some carpooling or stacking of cars or traffic or a jam, we're sitting ducks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, sir, very much. Who else on this side would like to address the matter? Roswell residents. Thank you very much for your comment. Yes, anybody else? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Romano, 155 Cochran Farms Drive. Again, same, same premise as the general. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is that we do have a school bus, but it's only for elementary school kids. I have 3 kids. 2 will be in middle school, and that bus stop is at the corner of Coleman and Chaffin. That's 700, 800 feet. In the fall, it's dark when they get dropped off. In the springtime or early spring, sometimes it's dark in the morning. It's just dangerous.
Steve, thank you. Thank you for your comment, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Appreciate the opportunity to present. Jason Sattler, 165 Cochran Farms Drive. Would like to maybe share an experience of just today. Let me back up, I would say. Design Review Board maybe did not take in consideration this, but was presented, but is the nature of the road and how it affects in a day-to-day activity. So as mentioned, pedestrian traffic, along with vehicle traffic, they don't mix well. So I'll share experience today, taking my son to practice. There were 2 pedestrians walking their dogs, and as I was approaching Chafin Road on Coleman, I almost got hit by a non-resident, and no one I recognized. But because I had to be in the opposite lane of traffic to avoid, hitting a pedestrian and a dog to traverse safely, I almost became a member of an accident. So any additional traffic that is non-residential or capable of handling this could seriously affect the safety of all people in the neighborhood and surrounding off of Chafin and Coleman and Cochran Farm. So would like to hopefully have that considered as part of the review of the Design Review Board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, sir. Any other comments from Cochran Shoals? Thank you very much for your thoughts, comments, and input. Yes, sir. In the back with your hand. Yes, sir. With a folder. Welcome. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hi there. Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. My name's Barry Barnett. My family lives at 855 Wild Run Court. We've lived at that address for 16 years. I'm not sure if you listened to the entire audio or read the entire transcript of that painfully long DRB meeting, but I did want to point out a few things that have been mentioned here today, and that is this reference to substandard nature of Coleman Drive. I believe that same substandard nature of that road would have been the same situation prior to Cochran Farms being developed with the 45-car garages, the garages that hold 45 cars, right? And that on a daily basis is going to be a lot more traffic than the church is going to have on that road. And yet that neighborhood is thriving, And there's going to be further development on that road, homes that are going to be built on that farmland. They also, in fact, several neighbors at the DRB mentioned similar concerns, and yet they had actually just moved into Cochran Farms in the last 2 years. So again, I just kind of, I just question, the severity of this issue, right? But I thought the most insightful comment of the night actually came from the neighbor's attorney, Mr. Rosen, at the DRB meeting. He actually said the quiet part out loud. He stated that Coleman Drive and Cochran Farms Drive act as private drives for the neighbors. Now, I think I have it on good authority from your transportation department, planning department, DRB, fire department, everybody, that's not a private drive. We shouldn't treat it as such. And I think this idea that Coleman Drive acts as a private drive, it speaks loudly. You see, while we've heard a lot about the concerns from the neighbors on safety, that doesn't really appear to be the core concern. It's a byproduct. The core concern appears to me, at least, to be that they want to have it to be just as it is today, even with all the wards. Because if not, perhaps they would redirect the investment in $400 to $500 attorneys an hour and redirect that to maybe help fund finishing that sidewalk on Coleman Drive. It's 800 feet. Of course, the church has already invested in a curb.
Sorry, Barry, I have to interrupt those comments. That's not part of the original DRB.
That's fine. Yeah, and so where does that leave us today, right? I've reviewed each of your areas of focus on your campaign websites: improved parks, improved infrastructure, more businesses in the city, recognizing and supporting veterans, government transparency. You know what I didn't see? I didn't see singling out and restricting the rights of a church in the middle of Roswell. In fact, not only should you deny this appeal without exception,
Barry, I'm
but
sorry.
you should do everything in your
Barry,
power.
Sorry, those comments are not part of the DRB. I apologize.
But you should do everything in your power to expedite the remaining procedural process in order to get this project moving. It's been delayed enough. Again, the church is just asking to develop this property as it's been zoned for decades and to have rightful access to public roads. And again, the church is going to be beautiful. So thanks so much for your time, and God bless.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you so much. Yes, who else would like to address this matter? Any other Roswell residents? Thank you so much for your time and input. I'm going to take a quick 7-minute recess for the council to give minutes just to catch their breath. Thank you so much. We'll be back in 7 minutes. Thank you. Quick recess. for allowing the council to take a short recess. Thank you for everybody's input, and we appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thank you so much, both from Cochran Farms and from St. Michael's. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember William Mortland.
So we're ready for a motion, is that right?
If you feel so chosen, Councilor Mortland. Yes, sir.
Okay. Motion to uphold and affirm the Design Review Board's decision.
A motion is made by Councilmember Mortland to uphold the DRB's appeal. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All in favor of the motion to uphold the appeal by the DRB, please, sorry. All those in favor of upholding the decision of the DRB, please raise your hands. Let the record state that the decision is unanimously upheld. Thanks so much, Council. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. At this time, Councilmember Mortland, would you read the next item under the Community Development Department?
Yes, sir. You want to?
Okay, Will, show's yours, brother.
Yes, sir. Community Development number 2, this is 2024-0505, 55 West Crossville Road, Parkway Village Small Tract, presented by Angela Rambo.
Willie, can I interrupt you for a
Yes,
second?
sir.
Council, do you all feel appropriately appraised and on this particular issue in front of you? You do? I've seen one no, I see 2 yeses, one. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Willie.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. As stated, this is a request for Parkway Village Small Track at 55 West Crossville. Here's an aerial of the subject property. The applicant is requesting small tract status in order to develop an 11,802 square foot daycare facility with 31 parking spaces. The daycare will serve approximately 60 students. The development will include 26,985 square feet of landscape open space and a little over 19,000 square feet of outdoor amenity space in the playground area. Detention is proposed to be underground. This is a copy of the zoning map. The requested site plan, including the fence that will go along the road, Crossville Road. Close-up of the site plan. And staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval with conditions of the request to grant small tract status for the development of a daycare. If the mayor and council choose to grant this request, staff recommends the following conditions. The owner-developer shall install a right-turn deceleration lane, which shall be approved by the Roswell Department of Transportation and the Georgia Department of Transportation. The owner-developer shall provide pedestrian connectivity from the 10-feet path along West Crossville Road, SR 92, to the daycare building as approved by the Roswell Department of Transportation. The owner-developer shall be required to address all staff comments, including all comments and conditions from the Roswell Department of Transportation during review for the Design Review Board and the land disturbance process. And the owner-developer shall remove any dead trees from the buffer and enhance planning so that the buffer meets current standards. And that concludes staff The staff presentation will be happy to answer any questions.
Angela, thank you for the presentation. I have a question. I'm very familiar with this particular spot. I actually have a dog buried there from many, many years ago. This used to be a veterinarian. Yeah, I didn't shoot the dog. No. I laid quietly with the dog when it was being put to sleep. It was very sad. Big giant Cujo item. The animal was just like the vet was scared of it. But I remember this place very well. We took our dogs there for years. How many parking spaces are there now?
Looks like 5 or 6, including a handicap space.
Yes, ma'am. Angela, that's what I thought. Thank you. And this plan shows there's potential for 31 parking places?
That's what they're proposing, yes.
Can you show where those 31 parking spaces would go on this particular lot?
They are all in front of the building, but they are behind the required 50-foot Parkway Village parking setback.
So I know everything is different, every piece you look at with this council, and you guys, you have to look and take different considerations. This doesn't strike me as tremendously different than the one that came before the council that staff didn't recommend last month, where they asked for the ability to add parking. It was an existing business already, and they wanted more parking, which meant more concrete, basically in the same part of the country of Roswell. This is a dramatic shift from 5 to 6 spaces to 31 on a very, very high-profile area on 92.
So that's correct. The last one that was through here a couple months ago at 160 West Crossville, existing business that has about 8 or 9 spaces currently, and was requesting an additional, I think about 10 to 15, so that they could have around 25 spaces. That was a consulting office, and that was a request to add additional parking. This is on the same stretch of land, Highway 92, requesting Park Village small tract. It was a vet. If you give me a little history there, I believe in the 1977 it was approved in a rezoning for a vet office prior to the Parkway Village being established in 1992, and then it changed hands, and it's been vacant for the last, I'm not sure how many years, but it has been vacant. It sits down a little bit in a hole, but it was a veterinary service building for quite a while when it went through, as it had gone through a rezoning in the past. So this is a small tract request, and it does have 31 parking spaces. It is a request. It must be approved by the mayor and council, so that's up to the mayor and council as to whether or not they feel that this use would serve and this location would be the best for this property.
I know Christine wants to weigh in. Because we haven't talked about this, so I'm just trying to figure out, how do we make a leap to go from 5 to 6 spaces to 31 spaces on such a small piece of property?
So the parking spaces are required by the square footage of the proposed daycare. So the 11,800 square feet requires the 31 spaces. The original structure, I'm not sure how big it was. It does not indicate that on the plan that I'm looking at. It was a 1-story ranch building, it looks like, and it was probably a lot smaller, which would have only required the 5 to 6 spaces at that time.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Jackie. Yes, ma'am. Christine.
Thank you. Jackie, I've got a couple of questions. So the small tract status, can you speak to what the intent of small tract status is when we created the Parkway Village, the assimilation of properties to get to the 7 acres and the intent and the reason for that? And then also, if they are not granted small tract status as intended by PV when the plan was made, what are the options for that parcel as it is? What are they entitled to?
Yes. So in 1991, 1992, when it was adopted, the mayor and council took a look at that section along 92, and they knew that that GDOT was adding more lanes. So it went from 2 lanes to 6 lanes, 3 lanes on each side. So because of that, they chose to create an overlay. At the time, it was an overlay, which allowed properties to combine for 7 acres or more, if they could, to develop commercial developments with specific buffers and setbacks that they were required to have. So if they had 7 acres or more and they abutted the perimeter of the district, they were required to have a 150-foot buffer with a berm or a 175-foot buffer to the rear. So that's where you see the shopping centers out there today, where the Target is, Home Depot, the Publix, all of those were developed with the 7 acres or more. If you could not develop with 7 acres or more, the council put in several different items that have kind of changed over the years. They created a hardship originally. It was called a hardship if you didn't have 7 acres or 400 feet of road frontage. It has morphed a little bit into what's just called small tract status. So what that means is if you have a property that's less than 7 acres and you cannot combine physically feasible combining with an adjacent properties in order to get to 7, you could request from the mayor and council for small tract status. And throughout the time frame from the early 90s up to now, we've had a few here and there that have been approved. Some have been denied. So you've got a mix of both where they have done both approval and denial on those. If someone, so technically next to this to the west, I'll start to the east of this is a shopping center that's developed with offices and everything else at 45 West Crossville and a couple other addresses that might create onto Crabapple Road. To the west of this is vacant property that's addressed at 95 West Crossville. There have been a few applications over the past, say, 15 years that have looked at those sites. They've been withdrawn. I can't remember at this point if any of them have been to the mayor and council and actually been denied, but I do know that some people have taken a look at those addresses, those properties, and have withdrawn after filing. This piece, as stated, was a rezoned piece of property that was for a vet clinic, and then over time, the Parkway Village overlay was put into place. In 2014, the overlay went away, and it was all the properties that were commercially being used as commercial got the Parkway Village zoning. Other properties that were being used as residential got a residential zoning classification or something like that. So there's currently no overlay. However, that doesn't mean somebody is not required to still come before and get small tract status. Just because the property might be zoned Parkway Village does not mean the uses listed in the table are allowed by right until the mayor and council grant an approval. So the applicant is here this evening to whether or not to see if a mayor and council will grant an approval for a daycare at this location.
Let me ask you, Jackie, did this matter go in front of the economic development team? Did this particular piece go in front of ED?
This property was, or this project was in the process prior to us beginning our dealings going before the ED team.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the council, I would not be crazy comfortable about this. This is one of the many puzzle pieces to me that should be part of the overall strategy. And there's a lot of pieces there. Our focus is, just to let the city know, our fellow residents, is we're primarily focused on the east side of our city from an economic development perspective. We are focused on what we call the uptown, upper Highway 9, the midtown, the mid part of Highway 9, and downtown, the part basically from the mill on up. And those are pin up our primary economic focus areas of where we are not only working in terms of strategizing for the next 20 years, but it's where a lot of our intent is. And I don't want to mislead anybody to tell you that, hey, we spend a lot of time where I live. I live on the west side. We have not spent a tremendous amount of time from an ED perspective because where we've seen that where the malaise has happened and the lack of intentional strategy has been in kind of the aforementioned areas. We have some holes in the Parkway Village that need to be addressed. I would really like those to be addressed in a holistic economic development strategy. One of the challenges that I have, and I think the city's made the mistake in the past, is getting caught in one-offs and making one-off decisions and then wondering, what do we do about it? When in reality, and we're stuck with a code that, Michelle, you're going to address next year, and that we're going to address holistically because it does need to be addressed. But we can't, if you wait on addressing the code, wait on addressing economic development till you address your code, you're backing up. That's why the strategy has been address economic development. Sorry to go on, but I'm going to ask the council, before we get deep into this with an applicant, before we get deep into this with other comments, is I'm going to ask the council to defer this item for further deliberation for it to go in front of and to be reviewed by the economic development team. That's my request. Councilmember Sells, yes, sir. Yep.
Is there some timeline on this from the applicant's point of view that we need to think about, Jackie?
I think there's always a timeline.
I understand.
The applicant always has a timeline, right? There's
Do they have a
purchase
building?
the property, you've got an option to it,
So I think we'd have to ask the applicant that. I think they indicated that there is a closing date that they're looking at. So I think we need to ask the applicant that question.
So how long do you want to defer?
I think that question would be, I would say, Daryl, how long can the ED team percolate on this? That quick? I think, I'm going to, if you'll forgive me, a month would be a fair assessment? Yeah, a month. But the applicant, you're here. Welcome, sir. Sorry to put you in the middle. Do you want to come up and talk at this juncture?
My name is Brad Riffle with AEC 50 Warm Springs Circle. In hearing what you're saying, what I can say is that the combination of our property and the property to the west, if combined, would still be below 7 acres. So even if they were combined, they'd have to come before you and do the small tract status filing. So I'm not sure what you're looking for from a deferral standpoint.
I'm looking for a decision. I'm looking for the economic development team to weigh in on that property and the adjoining property. In other words, they might have a bigger plan for that property than you might have for that property.
For 15 years, nobody came, so I don't think anybody's come.
So come up here and state your name.
My name is Amit Jain,
Welcome,
and
sir.
I'm the owner. I'm planning to build a daycare out there. And for 15 years, nobody came, right? You
Yep.
just heard that.
100%.
So how do you think in a month somebody's going to come?
That's part of putting it into the ED cycle and saying, this is what's going to happen with it. So the ED team will come up with a strategy for that property. It may or may not fit what you're thinking, right? Because it's going to be a holistic approach from the city's perspective. I think one of the mistakes the city has is not done a good job of saying this piece of property should be placemate like this and shouldn't be placemate like that. I have heard that complaint more times than I can count from fellow residents long before I came mayor. And that's part of our job, is to do a better job of placemaking and making sure that we have the businesses that we want in the places that we want them.
Because it's, as you know, I mean, the building cost and everything has gone up. It's probably going to cost us $5 to $6 million to build that, right? So it is an economic development. There'll be jobs out there and stuff like that. So I don't see it any different from any plans that you think that might happen.
Definitely, I understand, until you see the whole plan and say, hey, here's the pieces, here's what we want to go there from a placemaking perspective, here's the other pieces conjoined to that. There's no way, exactly, that's why I want ED to weigh in on it. And ED has not weighed on this. So this, to me, is another one-off decision without any long-term economic development considerations. For me, that's a mistake from the city perspective. It is nothing, no disrespect. There's nothing wrong with your, thank you for being a property owner in the city of Roswell. Thank you, sir, for looking at putting a business in the city of Roswell. I would like that to be in conjunction with ED strategy. I don't know what that is, and that's why my question is, has ED weighed in on this? And that, for me, informs me, and I think informs the elected body. If they haven't weighed in on it, then ED is ignorant and ignorant of your piece, and another piece gets made basically by just a piece of property through zoning. That's not our strategy anymore.
Can we get a conditional approval? So let's say
No,
if they
sir.
agree,
I
I don't
mean,
have to come up
I-
again.
These people make the decision, I don't. I'm making a recommendation that we defer this item.
Right. What I'm asking is, if you are referring that, are you agreeing, are you yourself agreeing to a conditional approval? If they approve it, I
No.
don't have to come back.
That would be, I can't, 101, I don't have the authority to make a conditional approval. The elected body does, the council does. But if they would make it, they're not, if they made a conditional approval, they're basically making an approval. So they wouldn't, in other words, there would be no reason to defer the item.
Okay, so I suppose the next step is to have a motion and a second. and then a
My
vote,
question,
or-
gentlemen, of you is, the question that was brought up by Councilmember Sells was your timeline. And so I apologize, I've gone sideways in this conversation. Is there a timeline that you want to address Councilmember Sells with?
I can tell you that the seller of the land he has no idea the process that this property has to go through to get developed. He is struggling with that seller to keep extending his closing date.
3 times you
I mean, we've already been deferred once, I think, right?
No, sir, you've not been
No?
deferred before. This is the first time this matter's come before this body.
I'm not deferred, but maybe file or something.
No, we had to get a.
Oh, the
a
traffic study.
Traffic study done and get a deceleration lane in place and all of that. That took us like 2 months to get stuff out, and so.
But his struggle is to educate the seller about closing and this process and the DRB and then the LDP and the many months that it takes. And he's not willing to agree to that. So that's where his struggle is in terms of closing. He has to get so many things in place before his closing can happen. So that's the
I think,
timeline struggle.
with all due respect, you just made a very powerful case on why I would recommend to the council not to move forward on this. I'm actually saying defer, but based upon those things you just said, would even give me greater pause on exactly the kind of mistakes the city has made on having a property owner selling to somebody that doesn't even understand the process, let alone the implications of the development. And for me, we are in a much more sophisticated game from a development perspective. The sellers and buyers understand the process. They are integrated to the process of economic development strategy in the city. When those holes happen, we're supposed to catch them. And we're still, this is one that slipped through, honestly. So, council obviously has full authority to do what they want to. Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Beeson.
Just in the interest of time, because I realize y'all are obviously trying to work towards closing. I understand that you want more time for economic development to weigh in. With Daryl's assumption that he can make this work within 2 weeks, instead of doing a 4-week deferral, can we do a 2-week deferral?
I think, Sarah, it's up to you guys.
So motion to defer to the next council meeting instead of 2 different council meetings away.
All right, so thank you, gentlemen, very much. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here. All right, is there a motion to defer on this item? Councilmember Johnson.
Probably won't have the votes, but I also agree with the 2-week deferral. This is a piece of property that's been neglected for 15 years. Someone wants to.
7 to 15 years. But let me ask you,
Yeah.
to your point, if it's 2 weeks versus 4 weeks, how does that affect the timeline?
Well, because obviously he's dealing with, closing dates. We just went through this 2 weeks ago with not having an economic development plan and denying a zoning request. I don't want to keep denying things because we are waiting on some sort of plan.
I am so glad you said that, David. I'm so glad you said that. Because the mistake of the past was something is better than nothing. And I would submit to you, sir, that something wasn't better than nothing. That often that something was something that was of less value to the city, that hurt the quality of life, that was not the kind of decision that you would make as an elected, as I know you as an elected body member, you wouldn't have made those decisions. You wouldn't have allowed those to happen. And to your point, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, but this is where patience is a virtue. Like, the economic development strategy is something that this one is a very strategical, intentional difference from this elected body in this city. It's a big deal. Not everything is perfect, but One-off decisions, I will say, I will fight with vigor. The reason I fight those with vigor is because if they're not part of a collective strategy that's not intentional, they're usually going to be a mistake, and we're going to regret it. And whether that's a 2-week decision or a 4-week decision or a 6-week decision, something is not better than nothing, David, and that is one of the mistakes the city made in the past. I heard that. I heard that from elected officials. I heard that like, hey, we're going to do that because something's better than nothing. I reject that. We got a lot of somethings we wish we could change today. And I don't want to make the mistake without ED fully informing you and Lee and Ellen and Christine and Sarah and Will, hey guys, this is where we fall. Sorry. Yes, Councilmember Sells.
So 4 weeks what you got, bud. So finish. That would be my counsel. So I don't want to do this again. I agree with these two that we don't want to just keep rolling this out. Yeah. There are people making decisions. If there's an economic case to be made that this should be done something else with it, let's do it and get it done in 4 weeks.
Fair enough. Councilmember Johnson.
Is the plan going forward that ED will review every zoning request?
So you remember my little dream? Your ED, who's in the ED meetings? I'm not. Jeff Leatherman, Captain Michelle, Captain Carol. You know what I said? Remember what I said? Every month, you guys should get in a pickup truck, a big van, and follow each other and go look at every one of these pieces so that we don't get caught with our pants down.
Agree.
Sorry for the alliteration. So that we don't get caught making a bad decision or a decision that we're uninformed, that the elected officials, along with the city leadership team, every month should visit every one of these zoning requests. Right? And the other thing I'll say to applicants is, come to your elected bodies and have an understanding before you put them into City Hall. Because once they get into the administrative part, the elected officials cannot do anything about it until it gets to this place, which is too late, honestly. So, yes, sir, Councilmember Johnson.
Agreed. And I agree with you. I want ED weighing in on our zoning requests. I just think this applicant has gone down the road, has done everything right, and at the last minute, we're kind of pulling the rug out from underneath them. I don't like that. As an elected official, I think that looks bad on us.
100% it looks bad
right?
on us.
And I just don't like it. And so,
I agree with you.
My vote's for 2 weeks.
So, I agree.
For 2 weeks
To your
because
point.
they did the right thing, and we're the ones changing the rules of the game.
Well, let me say, you darn tootin', we are changing the rules of the game. You got that right. Let's be very clear about this. We are changing the rules of the game.
I might gonna be on the rest of the night.
Yes. My gosh, I sure hope we're changing the rules of the game, because if we don't change the rules of the game, this city is in peril. This city's in peril. The economic malaise that happened on your side of the city, the eastern side of the city, was right, unintentional, bad, poor decisions, something's better than nothing. And you know what? Hey, we're being unfair to the applicant. You know who we're being unfair to? We're being unfair to our fellow residents. We're being unfair to the potential economic development of the city. That's who we're being unfair to. The fact that we have applications that still get in City Hall, you're right. We are in the process of, we're massively reorganizing this government, internally and externally. We are creating a 311 customer service program to massively handle these kind of issues. To the point, ED and community development now work together. It is not perfected, my young friend. It is not perfected. And you're right. I don't want an applicant. That's why I say to applicants, I'm saying publicly, don't put an application in until you have an understanding from the council how that's going to go. Don't do it. You're hearing it publicly. Don't put an application in. Do not put an application in until you know where the council stands on it, because you're wasting your time. And so you're right. It does look bad at this point.
Let me ask this question. So, to get this approved, you have to go through certain steps, right? Traffic study, X, Y, Z. Can we make it so that it has to go through an ED approval?
Yes. Yes.
Is that a code change, UDC change? How do we do that?
It's a process change.
Process change.
Great point, David.
Because if we're going to do that,
yes,
it needs to be part of the application
That's
process,
exactly right.
Right, and it doesn't need to be part of.
David, great
up
suggestion,
here.
brother.
Right,
That's a great suggestion. Simple,
so,
easy.
I don't know. However we can change that, we need to change that.
Michelle, don't run away. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, we have on the, I don't have my paper in front of me, but you have the staff notes. every zoning should have an ED staff note.
So I'm going to ask for a motion to defer with a amendment. Can we do this, David? Can we do two in one? Like, can we do on the same amendment? A motion to defer 4 weeks, along with a change to the process of approval, adding economic development as part of the checklist. Is that correct? Part of the review. Jackie, can we do that? I already started. I'm with you. But do we have a way to correct anything that's in the system now so that we can go forward, so that we have to have these kind of public discussions? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Would a motion tonight and approval tonight on this go, affect the applications that are in the process right now? Like approval of an ED recommendation.
That's right. If you got something that works, automatically it's got to go to, now formally, if this motion passes, it's got to go to ED. Do you need that?
You don't need a motion. What requires one factor is economic development.
Jeff, you're shaking your head at me silently. We okay? Okay. All right. So, do I have a motion from council to defer this matter? Councilor Worthland?
Okay, so real quick, just to make sure we're on the same page here, we are making a motion to defer to the June 24th council meeting. That's all we're doing. We're not going forward with the extra
And it will
verbiage.
be reviewed by the economic development team. And they will weigh in on this matter specifically,
Okay,
right? That's the motion?
all right, so motion to defer to the June 24th mayor and council meeting, along with the review from the economic development department.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Will. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Sells. All in favor, please raise your hands. I see 5 votes. All opposed? I see 1 opposed. Thank you, record. Let the record show 5 for and 1 against. Thank you very much. That item is deferred to the June 24th meeting and will be reviewed by the economic development team in the meantime. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Morton, would you read the last item under the Community Development Department, please, sir?
Oh, I thought you wrote all over yours.
Yes, sir. Community development item number 3, initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4.3. Who can submit an application, letter E, presented by Jackie Dybel.
Thank you, Councilmember Morton. Welcome, Jackie, again.
So this is the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to section 13.4.3. The current existing 13.4.3 administration legislative review. So the current existing language, just so you know, there was a little typo on the text amendment. So the current existing language in the code today says on a parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92. The original one, unfortunately, left off the 2 after 92. So that's the clear language that's in the code today. And then the proposed change is in red. A parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92. The parcel is required to have 51% of the square footage of development as non-residential uses. So that's the proposed change for the initiation of the text amendment.
Thanks, Jackie. I know council has plenty of comments. I don't know if they got any questions. So, Councilmember Sells.
Yeah, bet. I think the original typo was 4 years ago when this was left out in the first place, that it was only on west of Highway 9. So my view is that what we're doing here specifically is, this is great, thank you for this. So this stopped at the intersection of 9 and Crossville essentially, right?
So actually, the original one was on all CX zone properties that were done, and CX properties is on both sides. There is a little bit of CX properties on the east side, and there's a lot of CX properties owned on the west side, but that was specifically just for CX zoning. This one is for all the rest of the zoning on the parcels that touch, as stated, Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or on Highway 92.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Councilmember Johnson.
If I own property east of Georgia 400 on Holcomb Bridge Road today, I could build a multi-use family apartment complex before this change.
So, well, first of all, it's a conditional use.
Conditional.
It has to be approved by the mayor and council. And the stack flat building type was removed by the mayor and council a few years back. So you cannot do a standalone apartment building today on that side of, on the east side of Roswell, or maybe on the, there's certain areas. I think there's only a couple of zoning classifications in the city where you can actually do a stacked flat building type. Most of them were removed out of almost all of the classifications about maybe 4 years ago, I believe it was. So you cannot do a standalone. Now, you can request multifamily as part of a mixed-use building, which does not allow residential on the ground floor. You can do it on the upper levels, but it is also, as stated, is a conditional use, and it has to be approved by the mayor and council.
So this is really a checkbox of standardization of the code across these parcels here.
So this is to make this, in retrospect, similar to the CX zoning that was done 4 years ago.
I'm not the biggest fan of the 51% number because I believe it's very arbitrary. That said, I won't go into that deep discussion tonight as staff is working on some research for me, and I hope when we come back for the second reading, we can have a discussion about that later.
So the process for this, if this is initiated this evening, it will be advertised before and then be heard by the Planning Commission. And then after the Planning Commission meeting, it will have a first reading and then a second reading.
Jackie, what you're supposed to say is, Councilmember Sells and Councilmember Johnson, you're amazing. I can't believe you found this little loophole. You've saved us. There's no way a standalone multifamily. I thought it was Will. Well, that's Will. It was Will. So, yeah, what you're supposed to tell, you're supposed to give them like auditory remarks and tell them amazing.
Thank you so much for noticing this in the Unified Development Code, and that we are able to move this forward if this is approved for initiation this evening.
All right, so other thoughts, comments, or questions? Sarah, you've got to. I understand there's a news article that has you and me on the front page. I've heard about it, and it's about
We're
this
famous now.
conversation from this item in committee meeting. So you got to say something.
I'm really living out my dreams of having zoning and zoning maps and development codes on the front page of local newspapers. Because it is. I could wonk out about this all day, but I won't. I will keep my comments brief and pointed because we've got many more of these readings to go. To summarize my comments during the committee meeting, I do have some very major and pointed concerns about limiting, especially missing middle housing, but most importantly, mixed-use developments. To Councilmember Johnson's point, and a point that was stated during our original committee meeting, I believe the 51% to be arbitrary. Typically, when you're outlining a development, you don't define the percentage of space for residential. It's usually defined by number of units. That's also how it's typically come before council in the past. It's not 51% of commercial space, 49% of residential, because residential can be very broadly interpreted. It can be anything that applies specifically to the residents in addition to the units. I did some homework over the last week, looking at some of the mixed-use developments in the area, including, including Halcyon, including some of the newer developments that are coming online for mixed use. Avalon was another. Every single one of them was defined by their number of residential units. But if you try to interpret that into percentage of space, Halcyon, for example, was 60% residential. Chateau Alon, which is called Avalon 2.0, is 65% residential. Nexus Union in Union City, who's one of the newer mixed-use development, is 60% residential. Depending on how you defined Avalon, Avalon was tricky because their residential is not just their apartments, but it's also adjacent townhomes and 101 single-family homes with lot sizes of up to 5,000 square feet, none of which of those define as 49% residential. All that to say, I love mixed-use developments. I think mixed-use developments are the way that we can rectify some of the larger issues in suburbs, which detract against walkability, which decrease traffic mobility, and impede our ability to move around the city. And it allows us to be able to have live, work, and play spaces. So all that to say, I am very worried about 51% as an arbitrary number because I think that it will preclude us from many other developments, especially with the understanding that mayor and council do have conditional approval to anything that incorporates multifamily or stacked flats within the code. That's it.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Sells.
Yeah, I appreciate that rendition of history. I think you skipped one recent development that I believe is 99.9% residential, and it has a dollar store in the front. And I think that is the reason for this conversation. And that is what used to be a Super Target, which is now East Village. And so that's why this is important to me.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Councilmember Hall, I saw you writing a note, so I figured you were going to say something.
So not to get too deep into this, but these districts are, or these zoning is commercial mixed use, which we addressed 4 years ago, commercial corridor, and commercial heavy. And we're talking about commercial corridor and commercial heavy. And the reason that the number is 51% is because the language in the UDC talks about this district needs to be primarily commercial. And so in primarily commercial, what we were getting is 99% residential and 1% commercial because there was no number defining what primarily was. So since 51 is just over the line, that's where 51% came from. So that's the intent of the districts, that they are primarily commercial. And so that's the history of the number. Just wanted to add that.
I only think, maybe I'll get, so there was an article, I heard we're on the front page, maybe it's, okay. Well, when I listened to you, I don't even know what we're disagreeing about, other than, like, because I think everybody up here agrees with mixed-use development. I think, and that's why I would say, like, talk about economic development and economic development strategy. Like, there is a project that's going to be probably delivered to you in the next month. That's going to be, let's call it, if we use the percentages, 58-42, okay? But that wasn't the target, right? The target is every deal is different. And, like, I think, like, when you say I'm for mixed-use projects, so is Will, so is Christine, so is David, so is Alan, so is Lee, so am I. That's exactly what we're working on, mixed-use projects. So when you're talking, I'm wondering, what are we disagreeing about? Like, because we're saying the same thing, and everything we're working on are mixed-use projects. Contrary to the past, where Alan just referenced the quote-unquote mixed-use project that was the East Village project, which was sold as a mixed-use project, which was not really mixed use. It was overwhelmingly residential, overwhelmingly multifamily residential, very little mixed use, and most of the mixed use was quote-unquote just taking existing retail and saying it was part of the project. It wasn't any new retail. Or the project that I inherited along with Christine, Lee, Will, was we came in, the previous council and mayor had approved a 96 apartment project standalone on 1.33 acres. City doesn't know this yet because this council, which you're amazingly part of and part of the team, we've been working on it, trying to make a great mixed-use project out of it. But it's a perfect example of somehow sometime the nomenclature of discussion gets very confusing. It's like, we agree with you. We're all for mixed-use projects. And we actually agree with you. Like, each project stands on its own, and each project has its own acute specifics that we have to work on to make it work. So I don't know where we disagree. I really don't. When you're talking, like, where we disagree, where's the thump? Where's the thump, Sarah? I don't get it. Is that an actual question? It's a question.
I think the rub goes to Councilmember Johnson's point, which is the 51% requirement for commercial. I understand Councilmember Hall's point about the history of where it originated. I will also say that's a very easy way to wind up with a lot more blighted shopping centers, which we currently have in the East. I don't know about you, but I personally don't think we need another Halloween spirit. Your girl is in the spirit of Halloween year-round, but I don't think we need more blighting shopping centers to host these temporary stores because we cannot fill them throughout the year. When you start to lay hard on these old zoning codes, like commercial corridor and commercial heavy, which were from a time when strip malls were du jour and not necessarily mixed-use development, I think it's extremely short-sighted. I also beg the question on my end, back to our previous item, has economic development team weighed in on this item and provided long-term numbers, either from other municipalities that have similar codes, examples of their codes, and the type of development that we want from them, and specifically the zoning types that were used to get those developments. Because right now I think we're continuing to Frankenstein and piecemeal a dated code that doesn't seem to work for anyone on, we don't have aisles, but any side of the spectrum of where you stand. I can probably point at this half the room that probably hates the UDC as much as any other person who cannot stand the UDC, including myself. I think that there's a better way to solve the problem of mixed use without using, I will reiterate, arbitrary percentages. So I do ask if the economic development team has weighed in on it.
Well, I think you know the answer to that. I feel like that's such a political statement. Like, you know the answer to that question. You already know it. But you put it out there for the body politic to think that there's really like the 5149, as Christine correctly pointed out, was something that David, as the city attorney, advised the body on, saying, guys, you cannot leave the language as it is because you cannot defend it in the court of law. So you have to put a percentage in there so you can defend it. But you know, as well as everybody in this body knows, is that it is 5149 is simply for that reason, because it's not the guiding light of any mixed-use development that we're working on. The answer to your question you asked Michelle is yes, the ED team and the community development team are providing those numbers, but those aren't the guiding light to putting a project together. They're just informational. They're just guiding. Because I go back and take you back to 2022. When we came in with our ED strategy at the end of 22, we said, had a master planner, did all the economic charrettes and said, we were following that strategy that you were suggesting. And we said, uh-oh, that's not a long-term winner for the city of Roswell. We have got to get smarter than that. And that's why we brought in SEER, was to start thinking more dynamically about ED strategy than just simple placemaking, which we have to keep presenting. Basically, I know this is a lot. That's why I think the 5149, when you say that, is, you know, this is not about a 5149. And this is not about, you know what, no, we're not going to, the city of Roswell, under this current elected body, is not going to put standalone multifamily to replace the Halloween shopping place. That's not going to happen. And I know that there are some people in the body politic who want more standalone apartments up the corridors of 92 and up the corridor of 140, and that is not going to happen. What is going to happen is pincer movements of dynamic economic activity, which you're a part of and you're knowledgeable of, that will change the synergy of what fills in between those pincer movements. You know this. And you know that 5149 is not part of the conversation. You know that. That's so, to me, this is political fodder. Is the press still here? The press, doggone it. No, shoot. Doggone it. I know.
But we're recording it anyway.
No, to your point, I understand what you're saying in terms of we now have since revised into 2022. I did sit in on 2 master planning charrettes with elected bodies and a couple of stakeholders. I don't understand where we deviated from that, because I did appreciate the plans that they brought forward. And keep in mind, SEER has them on retainer, Sizemore Group, who did those charrettes, as their main master planner. So it's all circular. It's circular.
They're not the main master. Just for clarity, sorry for interrupting.
No, it's well, I'm struggling over the word cyclical because it's 10 o'clock at night. It's all coming back around.
Still have closure, by the way.
Get ready for a lot of incoherent thoughts. I'll completely close my remarks with this. I realize that what you have reiterated before in the last item and in previous meetings, that, and including the item that I don't want to say the address of the place that you're referring to, because I think we're talking about the same development in terms of the one that you were just referencing that's coming within the next month. I don't want our way moving forward, and I realize that we might have a fundamental disagreement of governance with this, of people have to jockey their council members in order to figure out how to navigate our code or how to get buy-in for conditional uses from council. I would rather have our code clearly articulate the wishes and the wills of council. If you're saying that the
100%.
wishes and wills are not 51%, then I want that to be reflected in the code. I apologize, go ahead.
Yes, no, sorry, thanks, Sarah. Councilmember Sells.
So a couple of things. The first is, it's been a while since I asked this question of Steve Stroud, but I believe he told me that something like 95% of that space is rent-bearing today. So we have developers sitting on these blighted, and they truly are, they're economically untenable pieces of real estate. And they're only waiting for some council that they can bend to their will to build more apartments, quite frankly. And so what we're doing here is making this a part of the code so that there is a high burden, and we're clear that this is an economic strategy. When we talk about mixed use, I'm talking about economic development. I mean, that's what I'm leading with. Is it going to energize that area? Does some apartments add to the value of that? Does some condos add to the value of that for the city? That's what I'm asking. So I'm not leading with multifamily. I'm leading with economic development, and if mixed use is a part of that, that's great. But if you want an economic analysis, talk to Lonnie Mims. He's sitting on a lot of real estate waiting for somebody to let him do something that we don't want him to necessarily do. And so I think that's what this is about.
Will? Anybody else? Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Sarah. Councilmember Worthland. No, I haven't got a chance. We haven't heard from our residents. All right, so now council is sorry. Are there any Roswell residents who feel, yes, sir, welcome, come on up. Welcome, Peter. Do you feel like you're going to add a lot to this that you've heard?
Council members, Mayor.
Welcome. Do me a favor. Tell everybody who you are and where you live, my friend.
My name is Peter Corman. I'm a homeowner in Horseshoe Bend for 32 years. Some people on our council may not remember when Horseshoe Bend and most of East Roswell not in Roswell. We actually were in unincorporated Fulton County. My wife remembers, though. My wife remembers because we got the pitch. Let's all marry ourselves to Roswell. And part of the pitch was we'll all be citizens of Roswell. I am not speaking for these folks from East Roswell, or those folks from East Roswell, although every single one of them know me very well. But I am here for my wife. Most of you on this city council and our mayor know my wife. My wife feels that 32 years ago we moved up to North Fulton, and the schools were excellent in East Roswell when it wasn't Roswell. The park was beautiful. It was bucolic. 32 years later, she compares East Roswell to Pawnee. Some of you have heard that. That's out of the series Recreation and Parks. Fortunately, in Roswell, it's out of Parks and Recreation. In Roswell, we have Recreation and Parks. I've got 3 minutes left. I won't take up more time. When this code was written, it was convenient that we neglected East Roswell. Call it a typo. Those of us who live in East Roswell have seen years of neglect. Neglect has an impact on our schools. has an impact on our traffic, has an impact on our quality of life. I don't think there's a city council member here or the mayor that hasn't heard it from me directly during their tenure on this council, and certainly well before it. So, either we bring the East up to the standards of the West, as was promised to all of the residents and homeowners in unincorporated Fulton County when we married ourselves to Roswell, and we make that equal for all of us. Let's pull it down. Let's build mixed use. Let's build single-family apartments all over the place. Or we make the code consistent and we just don't neglect East Roswell because we had a typo. I'm asking you to vote for this measure. Consider it, vote. Thank you for running a great city. I commend you all on doing a great job. I've seen a lot worse. This is the best it's ever been. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome. You visitor to our city, I see. Please let everybody know your name and where you live.
Gentlemen, ladies, my name is Jim Walsh. I live on the east side and off of Eves Road,
And you're on one of the boards and commissions as well.
and I am on the planning commission. So I wanted to make that perfect. I'm speaking as an East Rosweller tonight, who's been there for over 24 years. I understand what Peter was saying. We were all part of that. I want to thank you, this group, and you especially, the mayor and Representative West, and I can go down the list, but we'll just at this point, for bringing East back in and looking at one Roswell. It's been so long that it's been, well, the east side or the west side. It needs to be one Roswell. This is it might not look for other people, but this is a huge step in what were you going to say, mentally bringing people together and getting away from this east and west divide. Peter's correct. When we were asked and recruited by not only Roswell but others to be part of Roswell, we were promised every dollar spent on the west side, there'd be a dollar spent on the east side. The previous administration did not do that. They just let that set aside. Thank you for bringing it back. A question that was brought up about the 51%. Having had some experience with the UDC, there is an option for any developer with a good plan to get a conditional use, which says, for example, I can't do 51%, but I could do 48, and this is the benefit I'm getting. That can be approved by Planning Commission, which eventually rolls up to the city. So there's an option there. So 51% as a number is not that important because it can be worked through. The other thing is that sitting here listening to this tonight, I've noticed that there's changes here in some people's thought. Having worked with the Avalon architects, I know how that was developed, and it was developed on a percentage basis. I also know that there are people who never wanted this original to be all of Roswell. They wanted it separated at East Roswell. And there were people that advocated for that, who are now part of our elected officials. So I'd like to say thank you for what you've done. Thank you for these changes. Thank you for bringing us as part of the city, because it's going to just help join that group together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I would tell you, this council is committed to this proposition. Unfortunately, and I like the one Roswell dialogue, it's much better than saying East Roswell and West Roswell. I will tell you, in terms of practicality, there are a lot of things we have to be very distinguishable, like today. You probably didn't see it in committee, but there is a lot of sensitivity among this body to not only spend money, because that's just part, this, but is to be prioritize projects, forgive me, prioritize projects. And I can tell you that the ED strategy, there is so much time spent on the east side of our city in terms of recognizing that we have not done what we needed to do over the last 30 years, and realizing that we have to reconcile that, address that, and solve for that today and 20 years from now. And I can't wait for some of this stuff to start manifesting itself, because I get really tired of not being able to tell you things, because I can't wait to start telling you things as they start really becoming reality. Yes, sir, Councilman Johnson.
I just want to say I will be voting for this tonight to move forward because it is a standardization of the code. I am very fearful, though, that we are handcuffing ourselves because, to Mr. Walsh's point, the last thing I want to do is an applicant come all through the process, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on studies and everything else you want to do, and because it's 50% or 49% commercial, we pull the rug out from underneath them for some reason. That's my fear on this arbitrary number. And as a side note, we are investing in East Roswell. We've got a lot more investment to do. We have a world-class gymnastics program that my daughter has to drive 45, 50 minutes through Huckleberg Road to go to if she wants to, so we don't do it. And, there's a lot of things in Rex and Park, there's a lot of things in transportation that we're still behind on. And as long as I'm on this council, I'll be the biggest advocate for East Roswell as I can be.
Thank you, David.
Good Lord, can I get a new button?
No, that button is intentionally made to make it difficult for you to be heard. Yes, ma'am, welcome. Yeah.
Hi, Joyce Cross, 2300 12 Stones Drive. I'm in East Roswell. I think everybody in here is probably from East Roswell, and they all agree that we should have some parameters on whether it should be 51% or what have you. If you don't have any parameters, a developer can come in and say, well, you never stated what the specifics, and now we're demanding, like the developer in the Target property, he said, if you don't do it my way, I'm gonna call lawyers, and I'm gonna have lawyers in here. So having a specific parameter that you can work with and make provisions for and make exceptions for is definitely the way to go, because the developers are looking out for the developers. You guys and we are looking out for the city we live in, which is the city of Roswell. And then secondly, my other point is East Roswell, I hate to say east and west again, but East Roswell has the bulk of all the apartments in the entire city of Roswell. So we have plenty of apartments right now. And so making this more equal, I applaud you for taking this issue up. We need to feel like we're part of the city. We want to be part of Roswell. We don't want to be the stepchild of the city. We want to be part of Roswell. So I'm glad you're doing this. We already have lots of apartments in East Roswell. We have more apartments in Roswell than any other North Fulton city. So we're doing our share, more workforce housing. I would guess that a lot of the workforce in North Fulton, in Johns Creek and Alpharetta and all these places, they probably live in Roswell because it is the most affordable place to live in North Fulton. So hats off to you. I'm glad you're doing this, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you, Joyce. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Chris Okeisen. I live at 664 Granby Hill Place in Bishopsgate. And we're a small little complex, townhomes, 77 units. But we're a very tight community. And, we enjoyed the Target. Many of us would walk down there and use that Target store. We lost it. We had a Kohl's store. we lost that. In fact, the one of the presidents of our HOA, she worked in the jewelry department of Kohl's for many, many years. We had the Studio Movie Grill. We used to walk there or drive there. My wife and I were within a few hundred yards of where that complex is. And we used to walk there or drive there to see movies. We enjoyed having those facilities there. We don't want to see any more apartments. We have enough apartments. Yes, we're a small little townhome community, but we all own our units. Those units were built back between 83 and 86. We're proud of our little community. We just put in all new retaining walls. We didn't get no government assistance or anything. We put in, that cost us close to $400,000 to do that. 77 units paying for that. We just put in, we had to have our detention pond redone. We just paid for that. We just went and had 10 units totally, exteriors totally redone, had them rewrapped, had some structural problems. That was at $26,000 per unit. Okay, our community, through our HOA, we're paying for that. Our intention is to do another 67 units this year. We're talking about $1.7 million. Our little community's going to invest in our townhomes. We're proud of that community. We don't want any more apartments. We take care of ourselves. We're a community within a community, and we take care of ourselves. Yeah, we're just middle-class people. We got teachers, we got retired people. You know, middle class, but we take care of our community. We don't, and we miss the stores that we had access to. And we don't like the traffic. And many of us, our children graduated from Centennial High School with all the transient people coming through, apartments bring in people, they're coming and going. Centennial High School has gone down. Luckily, my daughter graduated before that happened. She got a good education there. She's now a doctor. So she wouldn't have gotten that today at Centennial High School. So anyway, I thank you, council, for doing this, because we don't need any more standalone apartments in our community. And, you know, I feel East Roswell, we should be on equal with West. This was done for West. We're all Roswell. So I thank you for doing this. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Welcome.
John Evans, Horseshoe Bend, near Peter. So I appreciate the motion that you're making, that we are moving toward one Roswell, equal on both sides, as others have expressed. I want to go a little bit on what Joyce has commented, and a little bit of history. A few years ago, when we were discussing what to do with the Target, and we all came and we spoke up, and it was 99% of the people did not want the apartments. But the owner said, well, they've been sitting there and we got to take this offer because it's the only offer we've ever had. So we took the offer. And so we said we didn't want that many more, another 2,000 cars on the road. He says, I don't care. It's not my problem. So he brought that before you, and the attorney said, well, we have no structure, no strategy that says we can deny him. So I appreciate at least having a strategy that says we want 51% of commercial, so that you can say, we're not going to do that. The mixed use, we say, that's our plan. As we have a strategy, then we can say what Roswell is going to be like. So we have development in East Roswell. We've got a couple of, we've got some new Dollar Trees, we've got some Goodwills, we've got Sally's beauty salon supplies, and that's what we're getting. And so where do we go? We go to North Point, we go to Avalon, we go somewhere else to eat. We got a great list of fast food places. So what I'd like for you to do is work on the strategy for East Roswell. I appreciate that you have a strategy for developing along 140, but I'd like about every 2 years we hear, oh, we're going to revive the strategy for East Roswell. I hear it when we're running for elections, but then I don't hear much after that. So, Mayor, I appreciate what you're saying, that there's a lot of things that you're talking about in planning, and we'd like to see those.
John, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, there are things that we are working on right now that are active potential projects we are trying to put in East Roswell.
I appreciate the things you have also done, the parks and so forth.
Thanks. It pains, I know, all of us. I know there's nobody where David and Alan would love to say, let me tell you what we got coming. And we are disciplined, and we are disciplined about the process. We are disciplined about our strategy. And, you know, you don't, what's the old saying, David? Don't pull the cart, put the cart, no, that's not it. I'm kidding. Anyway, we're close on some stuff, but we're not there. But I can tell you, I can't wait to shout out to East Roswell. I know this council cannot wait to shout out to East Roswell. I'm this economic development team. All I can tell you is, I know it sounds absolutely hollow. The east side of our city, is a huge focal point from us from an economic development perspective, because we know
Before that.
yeah, and for us, it's not just next year, it's what's it look like 10 years from now? What's it look like from 20 years from now? What's it look like 50 years from now? Like, this is a long-term play. Like, we have to revitalize the economic dynamics on the east side of our city. We know that. And just for what little it's worth, you saw the same kind of thing happening once you cross the corridor in 400. You can see the same kind of activity where you see a degradation of activity. You heard Sarah mention earlier, like the Halloween store. You saw a degradation of economic activity, which really turns into malaise. And you don't have to go far where you can see cities throughout our city in the north, south, east, or west. You know, there's a commonality, by the way. When we got into this, I'm sorry to bore you, but you can look at first, second tier marketplaces, and you can look at their growth, and primarily on the northern side, look at for the last 50, 60 years in the United States. There's some commonalities, and usually most of the growth is unintentional, it's organic, and what you see is that usually most local governments don't plan for it, and you'll see these huge movements of great economic upswings, and then you'll see what we call the fall. There's the fall in, and then there's a fall out, and then there's a backfill. And you could see that happening in other communities. When I moved to Atlanta, DeKalb County was the premier county in the city. When I moved to Atlanta in 1985, DeKalb County was it. And you can look and see what's happened in DeKalb County. You know, and to me, you know, we talk about this. It's like, where government's supposed to be really making a difference is at the local level. At the local level, we're directly accountable to each other. And that means, like, people say, well, I believe in laissez-faire government. And I said, well, you do? So you don't believe in zoning? Because zoning is not laissez-faire government. And so part of this is this government is involved in trying to change the economic dynamics on 4 different corridors of our city, and a big part of that is the eastern side of our city. The 140 corridor obviously stands out. So thank you, John.
Interesting item, the area where the Studio Movie Grill is. In redistricting, they redistricted that as a precinct. So they were expecting it to go into apartments.
Well, I can tell you that as long as this elected body, as long as I'm mayor and the elected body is in agreement, that ain't happening. So, I mean, I can just tell you verbatim, it ain't happening. Yes, sir, Mr. Long. Mr. Long, are you on any boards or commissions?
I am not.
Okay, why is that? Yeah, you ought to be.
Too much, it takes something I don't have, I think, but I appreciate everybody who does it. So, but, don't count your chickens before they hatch, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, but just wasn't applicable. As Sarah said, it's late, you know.
Can I turn this on?
Yes, sir.
on the little screen, but not on the big one.
Hold on, I think somebody was trying to adjust it in the back. There we go. It's on.
Oh, okay, thank you. So yeah, I appreciate all the effort y'all done over the past few years.
Scott, introduce yourself, sorry for
Sorry,
the
yeah,
audience.
Scott Long, 1055 Martin Ridge Road. And yeah, I appreciate all the effort y'all have gone through the past few years to sort of clean things up, equalize things, create a little bit of equity zoning wise for throughout the city, not just one side. So this is just another one of those cases, and I think it is kind of mostly a clerical cleanup because we've got 4 zoning codes that are, especially the first 3 are almost exactly the same, other than where they happen to be sprinkled throughout the city, but that allow apartments mixed with commercial. But only one of them has a percentage requirement, which is CX. CX requires 51% commercial. Like Jackie said, it's mostly west of 400, but there's also 2 or 3 parcels east of 400 that have CX. They have that requirement. However, CC has 0%, CH has 0%, PV has 0%. So I think this is just a wise sort of clerical cleanup to make sure that they're all aligned. Of note, the CH zoning category is a zoning category for Sun Valley, which when y'all passed the rule to equalize east and west rules on RM3, even the people who were most opposed to that cited a lack of minimums at Sun Valley as the reason for how Sun Valley turned out that way. So that's one example. And then CC is the zoning category for Studio Movie Grill, which is another one that there's a lot of discussion, and also East Village. So Sun Valley, Studio Movie Grill, and East Village are not CX, so they're not protected by this code. And therefore, it makes a lot of sense to align them. Whether every parcel ends up being 51%, I think, as was mentioned, every project can have variances if the council discusses with the developer if something's perfectly ideal. But I think for now, it's just a matter of cleaning things up. And you guys are sounds like you guys are gonna do some big changes to the zoning code, so
Yeah.
you may express that a different way. You may
I want to be honest with everybody, like the UDC is a gigantic priority, but it is not going to happen this year. It's not. It is. This body is not going to attack it this year. The body wants to, believe me. It's a bandwidth issue, and it's, in terms of priorities, like that's why the reason why I hired Michelle's on the team, is to bring expertise to deal with the code. But yeah, it's not going to happen this year. I don't.
Yeah. But so that's all the more reason to sort of shore this up right now.
100%.
Then fix it when you in a more complete way when you can. As far as how that 51% even came out, that came out in 2020. It was very well vetted by the Planning Commission. Actually, the Planning Commission actually tried to have the code come through as 75%, 51%, and that was. It was a very mixed group of people that were not all on the same side and did not always see eye to eye yet. On this one, they were unified. And
That's a 4-2 vote for the record, right?
That's correct.
I think, yeah, 4-2. But to your point,
that's correct.
There were different people of different political aisles, not D's and R's, but different political aisles locally, who voted in favor of it.
That's correct. And some of the people in favor, you might have been surprised that they did. And then when the council actually went and approved it, it was also quite a divided council at the time. And yet, on this particular issue, they saw unity that this was a very important thing to solve. The only issue really just being that we left off the other codes, which were essentially the same. So,
Scott, can you be the historian for us and pull up all votes like this? That was very, very interesting, actually.
We had before this we had better minutes, but at least it showed the vote. And I don't know if there's anything else left out, but, yeah, I just,
Have we screwed up something on the minutes?
no, I'm talking about, like, in 2018, we had really, really good minutes. Different subject.
Okay.
There was a whole debate about that. But anyway, thank you for looking at this.
I'm with you, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Scott. Sorry. Thank you for allowing me to talk during your time, too. I apologize. Thank you, sir. Yeah, get clap for him. He never gets any applause. Doctor, did you want to talk? Yes, sir. Make sure you please tell everybody who you are and the fact that you are on one of our boards and commissions and where you live.
Charles Krieger, I live in Horseshoe Bend. I'm on the Planning Commission. Just as a tangential kind of observation, speed can be a good thing. You know, if you're Usain Bolt or if you're Chuck Yeager, speed's fabulous. Our civic processes, I'm talking federal, are not designed to do things fast. They're designed to do things deliberately. And that same process filters down state and local. Yes, there's some things you want to get done with certain degree of rapidity, but generally speaking, things aren't supposed to go, get it done now, get it done now. That's not how we're set up. And I think that we just need to always keep that forefront, that deliberation is part of our constitutional republic, and that's not just federal, it's state and it's local. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Krieger. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from the large gallery still left? Being that or not, I will bring it back to council for final thoughts, comments, or questions. Being that there are none, Councilmember Mortland, do you have a motion, sir?
Sorry. Here we are. So we're done with this one? We can move on?
Yes, sir.
to-
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Okay. Okay. Motion to approve the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 13, Administration Section 13.4.3, who can submit an application, letter E.
Thanks, Will. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Alan Sells.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Clarifying question.
Yes,
There
sir.
was one typo. Is that correct, Jackie? Do we need to have that as part of this motion, or we're good to go? Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for the question. Motion's been made by Councilmember Mortland. It has been seconded by Councilmember Sells. All those in favor of the passing of this motion, please raise your hands. Let the record show there's 5 in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hands. Let the record show there's 1 opposed. Thank you very much. The motion passes 5-1. All right, next on the agenda is public safety. Councilmember Beeson, would you read the item under public safety, please, ma'am?
Absolutely. Approval of a resolution to apply and accept an FY 2024 Bulletproof Vest Partnership BVP grant. This is presented by Chief Conroy, Chief of Roswell Police Department.
I believe the chief has gone to sleep in the back, literally.
Guys, you don't want to stick around and support our police department?
Welcome, Chief. Jim, I'm sorry it's 10:38 before you got up here. You still got to go a long way, I know.
Are well past my bedtime.
I hear you, brother.
Good evening. So we were made aware of this award and the amount last week, so we did not have time to go to committee. And the application deadline to apply is June the 6th. That's why we're bringing it to tonight's meeting. This is a grant that we receive every year. The grant this year is an award of $20,060 with a city match of $20,060 for a grand total of $40,120. This will purchase 40 ballistic vests for Roswell police officers at a cost of $1,003 per vest. This is a grant that we do receive every year.
This is done based just along the council says, hey, we'll put up $20,000. The grant comes in for 120.
Correct. They notify us of the amount beforehand. We just apply and accept.
Just so you can accept it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions for Chief? Very good. All right, very good. Sarah, do you have any public, would anybody, any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? Thank you very much. Councilmember Beeson, would you like to make a motion?
Absolutely. Motion to approve a resolution to apply and accept an FY 2024 Bulletproof Vest Partnership BVP grant.
Thank you. Second, hold on, fancy pants. Motion made by Councilmember Beeson, seconded by Councilmember David Johnson. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Let the record state that the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Chief. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the City Attorney's report. City Attorney Davidson, would you read the item, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion for closure? Motion for closure by Councilmember Morton, seconded by Councilmember Beeson. All those in favor of closure, please raise your hands. Let the record state that the motion for closure passes unanimously, and we'll go to closure. Thank you very much. Being that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of May 28, 2024 is adjourned. Thank you for being here. Council, well, let's go. Let me turn that.